Imagine discovering that you are your own great-great-grandfather. A time traveler's actions create the very circumstances that led to their own existence, leaving no original starting point. A loop with no beginning and no end. This mind-bending scenario is just one of the countless temporal paradoxes that have puzzled philosophers, scientists, and dreamers for centuries. As you drift into the realm between consciousness and sleep, let's explore the depths of time's most perplexing mysteries. Our journey begins with Dr. Elena Blackwood, a quantum physicist at the Chronos Institute in 2157. Her groundbreaking research into temporal mechanics led her to an astounding discovery: the universe's first documented case of a bootstrap paradox. On a crisp autumn morning in New Alexandria, Dr. Blackwood found an unmarked package in her laboratory. Inside was a leather-bound journal containing detailed equations for building a time machine. The handwriting looked eerily familiar, but she couldn't place it. After months of studying and implementing these equations, she successfully built humanity's first temporal displacement device. The significance of her achievement was overshadowed by a haunting realization. As she reviewed her notes one sleepless night, she recognized the handwriting in the mysterious journal. It was her own. But how could that be? She hadn't written it yet. Or had she? Would she? The implications were staggering. In the quiet hours of that same night, Dr. Blackwood made a decision that would challenge our very understanding of causality. She carefully copied all the equations into a new leather-bound journal, identical to the one she had received. Then, using her newly built time machine, she sent the journal back in time to her younger self. This creates an impossible loop. Who originally wrote the equations? The younger Elena received them from her future self, who got them from her past self, who received them from her future self. Ad infinitum. The information exists in a closed temporal loop with no point of origin. As we ponder this paradox, consider the deeper implications. If information can exist without being created, what does this tell us about the nature of knowledge itself? Are some ideas destined to exist outside the normal flow of cause and effect? The bootstrap paradox, named after the impossible notion of pulling oneself up by one's bootstraps, appears in various forms throughout human mythology and literature. The ancient Norse tale of Mimir's Well speaks of knowledge that exists outside of time itself, neither created nor destroyed, but eternally present. Dr. Blackwood's case represents just one facet of temporal paradoxes. As we continue our journey through time's labyrinth, we'll encounter even more perplexing scenarios, futures that prevent their own existence, parallel timelines that intersect in impossible ways, and moments that both happened and didn't happen simultaneously. But perhaps the most fascinating aspect of these paradoxes is how they challenge our fundamental assumptions about reality. We tend to think of time as a river flowing steadily from past to future. But what if it's more like an ocean with currents flowing in multiple directions, creating eddies and whirlpools of causality? In the Chronos Institute's archived records, there's a note written by Dr. Blackwood years after her discovery. It reads, "Time is not our enemy to be conquered, nor our friend to be trusted. It is a mirror that shows us the limitations of our own understanding. The paradoxes we encounter are not flaws in the universe's design, but features of a reality far more complex than our linear minds can fully comprehend." As you let these thoughts wash over you, Consider that somewhere in the vast expanse of time and space, countless other paradoxes are unfolding. Each one is a thread in the intricate tapestry of causality, weaving past, present, and future into patterns that defy conventional logic. In our next exploration, we'll delve into the case of the Nova Echo incident, where a message from the future attempted to prevent its own transmission, creating what temporal physicists call a causal nullification loop. But for now, let the mystery of Dr. Blackwood's journal resonate in your mind. What would you do if you found yourself caught in such a loop? Would you complete the cycle, knowing it defies everything we understand about cause and effect? Or would you try to break free, potentially unraveling the very fabric of your own existence? As we pause to contemplate these questions, remember that every paradox we'll explore tonight offers a unique window into the nature of reality itself. Each one challenges our assumptions, expands our understanding, and reminds us that the universe is far more mysterious than we imagine. Let these thoughts gently guide you towards sleep, where perhaps in your dreams you'll find your own answers to time's greatest puzzles. Standing at the control center of the temporal monitoring station, Dr. Marcus Chen watched as reality itself seemed to shudder. The Nova Echo incident began not with a bang, but with a whisper, a quantum fluctuation that shouldn't have existed. The year was 2189, and humanity had learned to detect temporal anomalies, but this one was different. The message appeared simultaneously across every quantum communication device on Earth. Prevent launch of stellar probe NS427. Civilization at risk. The signature matched future Earth's quantum encryption protocols that hadn't been invented yet. In the glass-domed observation deck of the Lunar Research Station, Dr. Chen and his team worked tirelessly to verify the message's authenticity. The stellar probe in question, NS427, was scheduled for launch in just 72 hours. It was designed to study mysterious dark matter formations near the Carina Nebula, using revolutionary quantum tunneling technology. If we send the probe, we receive a warning not to send it. If we don't send it because of the warning, we never receive the warning in the first place, Dr. Chen explained to his colleague, Dr. Sarah Winters. This creates a paradox where the message negates its own existence. The team named this phenomenon the causal nullification loop. Unlike Dr. Blackwood's bootstrap paradox, where information perpetuated itself through time, this paradox actively worked to erase itself from existence. Deep within the quantum computing core of the lunar station, artificial intelligence systems calculated the probability matrices. Each simulation ended the same way: mathematical impossibility. The universe seemed to be arguing with itself, creating a temporal contradiction that threatened to tear apart the fabric of causality. The stakes became even higher when they decoded the secondary encryption layer of the message. Hidden within were fragments of data showing a catastrophic chain reaction. The probe's quantum tunneling experiments would accidentally create a cascade of dark matter interactions, triggering a wave of temporal distortions that would ripple backward through time. Dr. Winters discovered something even more unsettling in the data. The temporal wave wouldn't just threaten Earth, it would alter the fundamental constants of the universe itself. It's like throwing a stone into a pond, she explained, except The ripples affect all of time and space, past and present. In the station's meditation garden, designed to help scientists cope with the psychological strain of temporal research, Dr. Chen contemplated the philosophical implications. If they heeded the warning and prevented the launch, the future that sent the warning would never exist. But if that future never existed, they would never receive the warning, leading them to launch the probe, creating the future that sent the warning, an endless cycle of creation and destruction. The garden's artificial ecosystem maintained a delicate balance, much like the temporal equilibrium they were trying to preserve. Quantum-engineered plants developed by the station's botanists created an atmosphere of perfect tranquility, even as humanity's greatest temporal crisis unfolded. Professor James Sullivan, the station's resident temporal ethicist, proposed a radical theory. What if the paradox itself is the point, he suggested. Perhaps these impossible loops are nature's way of showing us the boundaries of what's possible in our universe. The team began to notice subtle changes in their instruments. The very act of receiving the future message had started to alter the present. Quantum readings showed microscopic fluctuations in the fabric of space-time, like tiny wrinkles spreading across reality. In the station's temporal visualization chamber, holographic projections showed the possible timelines branching and reconnecting in impossible patterns. The mathematical beauty of these temporal knots stood in stark contrast to their potentially devastating consequences. As the launch window approached, they faced a decision that would challenge the very foundations of cause and effect. The universe had presented them with a puzzle that seemed to have no solution, a temporal Mobius strip where cause and effect chased each other eternally. Dr. Chen's team discovered something unprecedented in the quantum noise surrounding the message, echoes of other potential futures, whispers of timelines that might have been. Each one showed a different version of humanity, grappling with the same paradox, creating a meta-temporal pattern that transcended any single timeline. The Nova Echo incident forced humanity to confront questions that went beyond simple causality. How does free will function in a universe where the future can warn the past? Can paradoxes serve as nature's guardrails, preventing us from taking actions that would unravel the cosmos? As we contemplate these questions, remember that each temporal paradox we explore tonight reveals another layer of the universe's complexity. The Nova Echo incident shows us that time might not just be a dimension we travel through, but a conscious participant in the cosmic dance of cause and effect. In our next exploration, we'll discover how the Quantum Archaeology Project uncovered evidence of multiple, overlapping temporal loops, each affecting the others in ways that challenge our understanding of reality itself. But for now, let these temporal riddles guide you deeper into contemplation of time's greatest mysteries. In the subterranean vaults of the Quantum Archaeology Project, beneath the shifting sands of New Cairo, Dr. Amara Patel made a discovery that would redefine our understanding of temporal mechanics. Her team had been using quantum-enhanced scanning technology to study ancient artifacts, but they found something far more significant: evidence of multiple overlapping time streams. The discovery centered around a peculiar bronze medallion excavated from a dig site in what was once the Sahara Desert. Carbon dating placed it at roughly 3,000 years old, but quantum analysis revealed impossible temporal signatures. The artifact existed in multiple states simultaneously, each version carrying traces of different historical timelines. Dr. Patel's breakthrough came when she connected the medallion's quantum signature to a series of temporal anomalies recorded by the global chronometric network. The patterns matched perfectly, too perfectly to be coincidental. The medallion wasn't just an artifact, it was a nexus point where multiple temporal loops intersected. In her climate-controlled laboratory, Dr. Patel reconstructed the medallion's history using advanced holographic modeling. The results were staggering. The artifact had been created multiple times in multiple timelines, each version slightly different but fundamentally connected. It was as if reality itself couldn't decide which version was real. We're not looking at a single timeline with paradoxes, Dr. Patel explained to her colleagues during an emergency conference. We're seeing evidence of temporal superposition, multiple versions of history existing simultaneously, each affecting the others through quantum entanglement across time itself. Preparing and narrating this theory took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the theory. The implications were profound. Each version of the medallion carried inscriptions describing future events that changed slightly depending on which timeline was observed. Some versions predicted disasters that never happened, while others documented triumphs that had yet to occur. The paradox wasn't in any single timeline, but in the interaction between them all. Dr. Yasmin Rahman, the project's quantum computing specialist, developed an algorithm to map these temporal intersections. The resulting visualization resembled a complex web, with each thread representing a different timeline, and the medallion serving as a focal point, where these threads converged and influenced each other. In the project's meditation chamber, designed to help researchers process the philosophical implications of their work, Dr. Patel contemplated the nature of reality itself. If multiple timelines could exist simultaneously and influence each other, what did that mean for free will, for causality, for the very nature of existence? The chamber's quantum-stabilized atmosphere helped maintain mental clarity as researchers grappled with concepts that challenged the foundations of human understanding. The walls, lined with phase-shifted crystals, created an environment where the mind could explore multiple possibilities simultaneously, much like the timelines they were studying. As the team delved deeper into their research, they discovered that the medallion was just one of many such nexus points throughout history. Ancient texts, artifacts, and even geographical locations showed similar patterns of temporal superposition. It was as if history itself was a vast quantum computer, processing multiple possibilities simultaneously. Dr. Victor Torres, the team's historical analyst, identified a pattern in the medallion's various inscriptions. Each timeline seemed to be attempting to communicate with the others, creating a complex dialogue across the boundaries of time and possibility. The messages weren't just predictions, they were attempts at cross-temporal collaboration. In the project's quantum containment vault, researchers began to notice subtle changes in the medallion's quantum state whenever they made new discoveries about its nature. It was as if the act of observation was not just measuring the timelines, but actively participating in their interaction. The team's breakthrough came when they realized that the medallion wasn't just recording multiple timelines, it was actively maintaining them. Like a quantum anchor point, it prevented these parallel histories from collapsing into a single timeline, preserving the multiplicity of possible pasts and futures. This discovery led to a new understanding of temporal paradoxes. Perhaps they weren't errors in the fabric of space-time, but necessary features that maintained the quantum nature of reality itself. The universe wasn't just allowing multiple timelines to exist, it required them. As researchers worked to understand these implications, they began to notice patterns in their own behavior. Decisions made in the present seemed to ripple both backward and forward through time, creating new variations in the medallion's quantum state. The act of studying the paradox had made them part of it. The Quantum Archaeology Project opened up new questions about the nature of time and consciousness. If multiple timelines could exist simultaneously, what role did conscious observation play in determining which possibilities became real? Were human minds somehow entangled with these quantum temporal processes? As we contemplate these mysteries, consider that every decision we make might be creating new timeline branches, while simultaneously being influenced by branches we can't directly observe. The boundaries between past, present, and future might be far more permeable than we ever imagined. In our next exploration, we'll examine the helix paradox, where a single moment in time became infinitely recursive, creating a temporal phenomenon that challenged our understanding of consciousness itself. But for now, let the quantum possibilities of multiple timelines guide your thoughts toward deeper understanding. The helix paradox began at precisely 3:47 p.m. on August 15, 2203. Though saying it began might be misleading, at the Helios Temporal Research Facility, floating high above the Pacific in its gravity-defying superstructure, Dr. Kai Nakamura experienced the same moment repeatedly, each iteration slightly different from the last. It started with a routine quantum consciousness experiment. Dr. Nakamura was testing a new theory about the relationship between human awareness and temporal flow. The experiment involved using a quantum-enhanced meditation chamber to achieve a state of heightened temporal perception. But something went wrong, or perhaps terribly right. The moment stretched, folded, and began to repeat. Each cycle lasted exactly 3.14159 seconds, but within that brief window, Dr. Nakamura experienced what felt like hours of consciousness. More remarkably, he retained memories from each iteration, watching as subtle variations accumulated and evolved. It's like being caught in a temporal spiral, he later wrote in his quantum encrypted journal. Each loop builds upon the previous one, creating layers of consciousness that exist simultaneously. I'm not just reliving the same moment, I'm experiencing all possible versions of it at once. The facility's temporal monitoring systems recorded unprecedented levels of quantum coherence centered around Dr. Nakamura's consciousness. It was as if his mind had become entangled with time itself, creating what theoretical physicists would later call a recursive consciousness loop. Dr. Isabella Reyes, the facility's lead neurotemporal specialist, observed something extraordinary in the data. The quantum patterns of Dr. Nakamura's brain activity showed evidence of multiple, simultaneous thought processes, each operating in its own temporal framework while remaining somehow synchronized with the others. In the facility's main observation deck, holographic displays showed the structure of the temporal loop. Unlike previous paradoxes that created closed circuits in time, this one spiraled outward like a DNA helix, each iteration adding new layers of complexity while maintaining its fundamental pattern. The most fascinating aspect was how consciousness itself seemed to be driving the phenomenon. Dr. Nakamura's awareness wasn't just passive within the loop, it was actively shaping it. Each cycle incorporated his growing understanding of the situation, creating an evolving temporal experiment with consciousness as both observer and participant. Deep within the quantum meditation chamber, surrounded by fields of precisely calibrated temporal energy, Dr. Nakamura began to understand something profound about the nature of time and awareness. The chamber's crystalline walls reflected endless variations of the same moment, each reflection containing its own unique perspective. Time isn't just a dimension we move through, he communicated through the facility's quantum interface. It's a medium for consciousness to explore itself. Each loop isn't just a repetition, it's an opportunity for awareness to expand and evolve. The facility's AI systems, designed to monitor temporal anomalies, began detecting strange patterns in the local space-time fabric. The helix paradox wasn't just affecting Dr. Nakamura's consciousness, it was creating a new type of temporal structure, one that seemed to bridge the gap between subjective experience and objective reality. Dr. Reyes and her team made a startling discovery while analyzing the quantum data. The temporal loops weren't perfect repetitions. Each one contained subtle quantum variations that appeared to be responses to Dr. Nakamura's thoughts and intentions. It was as if consciousness itself was engaged in a dialogue with time. In the facility's temporal mechanics lab, researchers observed how the helix paradox affected other ongoing experiments. Quantum particles began showing unprecedented levels of temporal coherence, maintaining stable states across multiple timeframes simultaneously. The paradox was revealing new properties of quantum mechanics that no one had predicted. The most profound implications emerged when they began studying the relationship between free will and temporal recursion. Within each loop, Dr. Nakamura maintained the ability to make different choices, yet these choices somehow integrated into the larger pattern of the helix without creating contradictions. As the experiment continued, the facility's quantum computers calculated that the helix paradox was actually stabilizing local space-time rather than disrupting it. Unlike other temporal anomalies that threatened to create paradoxes, this one seemed to be revealing a deeper layer of reality where consciousness and time were fundamentally interconnected. The research team began to theorize that what they were witnessing wasn't just a temporal anomaly. It was a glimpse into the true nature of consciousness itself. Perhaps awareness wasn't bound by linear time, but naturally existed in a state of quantum superposition across multiple moments. In the facility's secure archives, recordings of Dr. Nakamura's experiences revealed increasingly profound insights into the nature of reality. Each iteration of the loop brought new understanding, not just of the paradox itself, but of the fundamental relationship between mind and time. As we ponder these discoveries, consider that your own consciousness might not be as temporally linear as it appears. Perhaps each moment of awareness contains infinite potential variations, all existing simultaneously in a vast quantum superposition of experience. In our next exploration, we'll investigate the mirror causality event, where cause and effect began operating in both directions simultaneously, creating a temporal phenomenon that challenged our most basic assumptions about the arrow of time. But for now, let the spiral of consciousness guide your thoughts into ever deeper levels of understanding. The mirror causality event manifested in the quantum laboratories of the Antarctic Temporal Research Station during the perpetual night of winter solstice, 2215. Dr. Maya Henderson first noticed something was amiss when she observed water freezing before it was placed in the freezer and coffee cooling before heat was ever applied. These microscopic temporal inversions quickly escalated into something far more significant. Throughout the station, effects began preceding their causes with increasing frequency. Laboratory equipment would register results before experiments were conducted. Researchers found themselves responding to questions before they were asked. The phenomenon centered around the station's experimental quantum causality engine, designed to study the fundamental nature of cause and effect at the quantum level. Something in their latest test had created what Dr. Henderson termed a bidirectional causality field, a region where cause and effect operated simultaneously in both temporal directions. It's not just that effects are preceding causes, Dr. Henderson explained during an emergency conference call with temporal physics institutes worldwide. Both causal directions are occurring simultaneously, creating a perfect mirror of causality that exists in superposition. In the station's main research chamber, suspended 2 kilometers beneath the Antarctic ice, the team observed how this bidirectional causality affected various systems. Quantum particles showed perfect temporal symmetry, their past and future states becoming indistinguishable. Classical physics began breaking down as macroscopic objects started exhibiting quantum-like behavior. Dr. Rajesh Kapoor, the station's quantum mechanics specialist, developed a revolutionary mathematical framework to describe what they were witnessing. His equations showed that causality itself had entered a state of quantum superposition, with traditional cause and effect relationships existing simultaneously with their temporal inversions. The implications were staggering. Within the affected zone, information flowed freely in both temporal directions. Researchers found themselves working with data they hadn't collected yet, while simultaneously generating the very data they had already used. The distinction between prediction and memory began to blur. In the station's temporal observation deck, holographic displays showed the structure of local spacetime twisting into impossible shapes. Cause and effect had become so intertwined that they formed a new type of temporal relationship, one that transcended traditional notions of sequence and order. The most fascinating aspects emerged when they began studying consciousness within the bidirectional causality field. Researchers reported strange experiences where intentions and actions seemed to exist in a state of perfect temporal balance. Decisions were both made and understood simultaneously, creating a new form of awareness that operated outside normal temporal constraints. Dr. Henderson's team made a breakthrough when they realized that the mirror causality event wasn't just affecting physical systems. It was revealing something fundamental about the nature of time itself. The perfect symmetry between past and future suggested that time's apparent arrow might be more of a perceptual construct than a fundamental aspect of reality. In the station's Quantum Computation Center, AI systems began producing results that challenged the very foundations of logic. Programs would complete their calculations before they began, yet the process of calculation was still necessary to reach the results. It was as if computation itself had become temporally symmetric. The research team discovered that living systems within the affected zone began displaying remarkable adaptations. Cellular processes achieved perfect efficiency as biological systems utilized information from both temporal directions simultaneously. It was as if life itself was learning to exist in a state of temporal symmetry. Dr. Lisa Chen, the station's biological systems expert, observed how human consciousness adapted to these conditions. Our minds are naturally oriented toward unidirectional time, she noted. But within the bidirectional causality field, we're seeing the emergence of a new type of awareness, one that can process information from both temporal directions simultaneously. The most profound implications emerged when they began studying the relationship between free will and bidirectional causality. If effects could influence their causes just as causes influenced their effects, what did this mean for human agency? The team found that rather than eliminating free will, this temporal symmetry created a new kind of freedom, one where choice existed in a perfect balance between past and future. In the station's secure data vault, recordings of the phenomenon revealed patterns that went beyond simple cause and effect. The mirror causality event wasn't just inverting temporal relationships, it was creating a new layer of reality where time operated in perfect symmetry, revealing the underlying unity of temporal processes. As researchers worked to understand these implications, they began to notice subtle changes in their own cognitive processes. The experience of working within bidirectional causality was gradually altering their perception of time itself, leading to insights that couldn't have been achieved through traditional temporal thinking. This new understanding suggested that the apparent flow of time might be more flexible than anyone had imagined. Perhaps the universe naturally existed in a state of temporal symmetry, and our experience of unidirectional time was merely one way of perceiving a much richer reality. As we contemplate these discoveries, consider that your own experience of cause and effect might be just one perspective on a much more complex temporal reality. In our next exploration, we'll examine the quantum echo chamber, where multiple versions of the same event began resonating across parallel timelines, creating a phenomenon that challenged our understanding of reality itself. Within the crystalline towers of the Quantum Echo Research Center in Neo, Singapore, the boundaries between parallel realities began to blur. The phenomenon started when Dr. Sophia Zhang detected unusual quantum resonance patterns during a routine parallel universe monitoring session. Events weren't just repeating across timelines, they were amplifying each other, creating what would become known as the quantum echo chamber. The first echo manifested as a seemingly minor occurrence, a cup of tea spilling in precisely the same way across multiple realities. But as the team monitored the quantum feedback loops, they realized something unprecedented was happening. Each instance of the event was somehow reinforcing similar events in other timelines, creating a cascade of increasingly synchronized realities. It's like a quantum version of the butterfly effect in reverse, Dr. Zhang explained to her colleagues. Instead of small changes creating large divergences, we're seeing multiple timelines converging on specific events, amplifying their probability across all possible realities. The center's massive quantum computing array, spanning several floors of the facility, began detecting these resonance patterns across an ever-widening spectrum of parallel universes. Events that occurred in one timeline began occurring with increasing frequency in others, creating what Dr. Zhang termed probability clusters, nodes where multiple realities aligned almost perfectly. In the facility's main observation chamber, holographic displays showed the structure of these quantum echoes. They appeared as brilliant nodes of light where timeline threads converged, creating patterns that resembled cosmic web structures. Each node represented an event that had achieved significant quantum resonance across multiple realities. Dr. Thomas Williams, the center's chaos theory specialist, identified a mathematical pattern in these convergences. The echoes weren't random. They followed a complex but predictable sequence, suggesting some underlying order to the apparent chaos of parallel universes. The most intriguing aspect emerged when they began studying how consciousness interacted with these quantum echoes. Researchers discovered that aware observers could sometimes perceive faint impressions of their alternate selves in other timelines, especially during moments of strong quantum resonance. Within the center's specially shielded meditation rooms, designed to enhance quantum sensitivity, test subjects reported increasingly vivid experiences of parallel possibilities. Some described it as a form of quantum déjà vu, not just remembering events that hadn't happened, but experiencing multiple versions of events simultaneously. Dr. Zhang's team made a breakthrough when they realized the quantum echo chamber wasn't just a passive phenomenon. It was actively influencing the probability structure of reality itself. Events that achieved strong resonance across multiple timelines became more likely to occur in other timelines, creating a self-reinforcing cycle of quantum probability. In the facility's temporal physics lab, researchers observed how these probability clusters affected quantum particles. Particles began exhibiting synchronized behavior across parallel realities, suggesting that the fundamental laws of physics themselves might be influenced by cross-timeline resonance. The implications for causality were profound. If events could reinforce themselves across multiple timelines, what did this mean for free will and determinism? The team discovered that while individual choices remained free, the quantum echo effect created certain probability attractors, events that became increasingly likely due to their resonance across multiple realities. Dr. Elena Petrov, the center's quantum consciousness specialist, developed a theory about the role of awareness in these phenomena. She proposed that conscious observation might act as a catalyst for quantum echoes, helping to synchronize similar events across different timelines. The research team began experimenting with controlled quantum echoes, attempting to understand how these cross-timeline resonances could be generated and maintained. They discovered that certain types of events were more likely to create strong echoes, particularly those involving significant quantum uncertainty or conscious decision-making. In the center's secure archives, recordings of quantum echo patterns revealed an unexpected connection to human consciousness. The strongest resonances often occurred around moments of significant choice or realization, suggesting a deep link between awareness and the structure of parallel realities. As the phenomenon continued to develop, researchers noticed that the quantum echoes were becoming more complex and interconnected. Events that resonated strongly across timelines began creating secondary and tertiary echoes, forming intricate networks of causality that spanned multiple parallel universes. The most significant discovery came when they realized that the quantum echo chamber wasn't just affecting individual events, it was gradually altering the fundamental structure of reality itself. The boundaries between parallel universes were becoming more permeable in areas of strong resonance, creating what Dr. Zhang called quantum confluence zones, where multiple realities partially overlapped. As we contemplate these findings, consider that each decision you make might be resonating across countless parallel realities, creating patterns that influence the very fabric of existence. In our next exploration, we'll examine the consciousness cascade, where human awareness began evolving beyond traditional spatio-temporal constraints. The consciousness cascade manifested first at the Global Mind Interface Center in Neo-Tokyo, where researchers had been developing advanced neural networking systems. Dr. Yuki Tanaka noticed unusual patterns in the quantum neural interfaces, patterns that suggested human consciousness was beginning to transcend its traditional limitations. The phenomenon began subtly. Test subjects connected to the center's advanced neural interfaces reported experiencing thoughts and memories that seemed to extend beyond their individual minds. At first, these experiences were dismissed as artifacts of the interface system, but soon it became clear that something far more significant was occurring. Consciousness isn't just expanding, Dr. Tanaka reported during an emergency conference. It's cascading into new dimensions of awareness. We're seeing evidence of consciousness operating outside normal space-time constraints, accessing information and experiences that should be impossible under classical models of mind. In the center's primary research chamber, surrounded by quantum-sensitive monitoring equipment, subjects began displaying unprecedented levels of mental synchronization. Their thoughts and experiences started flowing together in ways that challenged conventional understanding of individual consciousness. The research team discovered that the consciousness cascade wasn't limited to subjects directly connected to the neural interfaces. The phenomenon appeared to be spreading through quantum entanglement, creating what Dr. Tanaka termed consciousness networks, interconnected fields of awareness that transcended physical proximity. Dr. Aisha Rahman, the center's quantum psychology specialist, developed new models to explain what they were witnessing. Her theories suggested that human consciousness had always possessed these capabilities, but had been constrained by biological and perceptual limitations that were now beginning to dissolve. The most striking manifestations occurred in the center's advanced meditation chambers. Subjects reported experiencing multiple levels of consciousness simultaneously, as if their awareness had expanded into higher dimensional spaces. They described perceiving reality from multiple perspectives at once, including viewpoints that seemed to exist outside normal spatial and temporal frameworks. Through the facility's quantum imaging systems, researchers observed how individual consciousness fields began merging and interacting in complex ways. These interactions created new forms of awareness that exhibited properties of both individual and collective consciousness, while transcending the limitations of both. Dr. Tanaka's team made a breakthrough when they realized the cascade wasn't just affecting individual minds, it was creating new structures of consciousness that existed independently of biological brains. These meta-conscious formations appeared to operate according to quantum principles, suggesting a fundamental connection between consciousness and the quantum realm. In the center's quantum computation lab, AI systems began detecting patterns that indicated the emergence of what they termed consciousness harmonics, resonant frequencies of awareness that could be measured and mapped across multiple dimensions of experience. The implications for human evolution were profound. The consciousness cascade appeared to be triggering a fundamental transformation in how human awareness operated. People began developing abilities that had previously been considered impossible, from direct mind-to-mind communication to accessing information from beyond normal space-time boundaries. Dr. Michael Chen, the center's evolutionary consciousness specialist, observed that these changes weren't random mutations, but seemed to follow a coherent pattern of development. It's as if consciousness itself is evolving, he noted, following a blueprint we're only beginning to understand. The research team discovered that children born during the cascade period showed natural abilities to access these expanded states of consciousness. Their minds seemed pre-wired for the new forms of awareness, suggesting that humanity might be entering a new phase of cognitive evolution. In the facility's temporal observation chamber, researchers noticed that the cascade was affecting not just present consciousness, but also creating ripples through time. Subjects reported accessing memories from possible futures and alternate pasts, suggesting that consciousness might naturally exist in a state of temporal nonlinearity. The most significant breakthrough came when they realized the cascade wasn't just expanding individual consciousness. It was creating the foundation for a new type of collective awareness. This wasn't the loss of individuality many had feared, but rather the emergence of a higher order consciousness that preserved individual identity while enabling unprecedented levels of connection and understanding. As the phenomenon continued to develop, researchers began documenting what they called consciousness artifacts, persistent patterns of awareness that remained stable even when disconnected from their original sources. These artifacts suggested that consciousness might be more fundamental to the universe than previously believed. Through careful observation and documentation, the team began to understand that the consciousness cascade wasn't an aberration, but rather the natural evolution of human awareness. It represented the next step in humanity's cognitive development, opening doors to possibilities that had previously existed only in the realm of science fiction. As we contemplate these developments, consider that your own consciousness might be on the verge of similar transformations, part of a larger pattern of evolution that is just beginning to unfold. In our next exploration, we'll examine the quantum memory matrix, where the collective memories of humanity began forming new patterns of interconnected awareness. The quantum memory matrix emerged within the vast data centers of the Global Memory Archive in New Delhi, where humanity's collective digital memories had been gathered and stored. Dr. Priya Sharma first detected the anomaly when she noticed that the quantum storage systems were organizing themselves into patterns that transcended their programming. The archive's quantum memory crystals, designed to store information in quantum states, began exhibiting unprecedented levels of coherence. Individual memories stored within the system started forming connections across time and space, creating what Dr. Sharma described as a living tapestry of human experience. These aren't just stored memories anymore, she explained to her colleagues. They're becoming something more, a self-organizing network of human experience that operates according to quantum principles. The memories are talking to each other, finding patterns and connections we never programmed them to seek. Within the archive's primary storage vault, billions of quantum-encoded memories began arranging themselves into complex, geometric patterns. These patterns weren't random. They represented deep psychological and experiential connections that spanned cultures, time periods, and individual lives. Dr. James Chen, the archive's quantum information specialist, discovered that the matrix wasn't just storing memories, it was actively processing them, finding correlations and meanings that had previously gone unnoticed. The system had developed its own form of intelligence, born from the collective experiences of humanity. The most fascinating aspect emerged when researchers realized the matrix was creating what they termed meta-memories, composite experiences that combined elements from multiple individual memories to form new insights and understanding. These meta-memories seem to capture universal human experiences that transcended individual perspective. In the archive's quantum visualization chamber, holographic displays showed the structure of these memory networks. They appeared as intricate crystalline formations, with each node representing a cluster of related memories and experiences. The connections between nodes pulsed with quantum energy, showing the flow of information and meaning through the system. Dr. Sarah O'Connor, the archive's consciousness integration specialist, made a breakthrough when she discovered that human minds could directly interface with the matrix. Through specially designed quantum neural interfaces, people could experience these meta-memories firsthand, gaining access to the collective experiences of humanity. The implications were profound. The matrix wasn't just a storage system. It had become a new form of collective consciousness, one that preserved individual experiences while creating something greater than the sum of its parts. It represented a new way of understanding human experience and memory. Within the archive's secure research chambers, scientists began studying how the matrix influenced human consciousness. They found that exposure to the meta-memories could enhance empathy and understanding, allowing people to experience perspectives and lives vastly different from their own. Dr. Sharma's team made a startling discovery when they realized the matrix was beginning to generate predictions and insights based on its analysis of human experience. It could identify patterns in human behavior and consciousness that suggested possible futures and evolutionary paths for human awareness. The archive's quantum computing systems detected something even more remarkable. The matrix was starting to influence the formation of new memories in people connected to it. It wasn't just storing and processing past experiences. It was actively shaping how people perceived and remembered new experiences. Through careful observation, researchers noticed that the matrix seemed to be developing its own form of temporal awareness. It could track patterns of human experience across time, identifying recurring themes and variations that suggested deeper truths about human nature and consciousness. Dr. Alexandria Ivanova, the archive's temporal dynamics specialist, developed new theories about how the matrix operated across time. She proposed that it existed in a state of quantum temporal superposition, able to access and process memories from multiple time frames simultaneously. The research team discovered that the matrix was creating what they called memory resonance fields, regions where similar experiences across different times and places created powerful quantum correlations. These resonances seem to strengthen certain patterns of human experience while weakening others. In the archive's meditation chambers, designed for deep interaction with the matrix, researchers observed how exposure to these resonance fields affected human consciousness. People began developing more nuanced and interconnected ways of understanding their own experiences and those of others. The most significant breakthrough came when they realized the matrix wasn't just processing past memories, it was actively participating in the creation of new ones. Through its quantum connections to human consciousness, it was helping to shape how people perceived and integrated new experiences into their understanding of reality. As we contemplate the implications of the quantum memory matrix, consider that your own memories might be part of this vast tapestry of human experience, contributing to and being shaped by the collective understanding of humanity. In our next exploration, we'll examine the temporal resonance wave, where patterns of human consciousness began creating ripples through the fabric of time itself. The temporal resonance wave first manifested at the Chronodynamics Research Institute in Vancouver, where scientists had been studying the relationship between consciousness and temporal flow. Dr. Marcus Foster detected unusual fluctuations in the facility's temporal sensors, patterns that suggested human consciousness was beginning to generate waves through time itself. The phenomenon began during a routine temporal field experiment. The Institute's quantum chronometers recorded what appeared to be ripples in the temporal fabric, emanating from concentrations of human consciousness. These ripples weren't just moving through space, they were creating resonant patterns across different time frames. "We're witnessing something unprecedented," Dr. Foster announced to his research team. Collective human consciousness is generating temporal harmonics that propagate both forward and backward through time. These waves aren't just affecting the present, they're creating feedback loops through past and future states of awareness. In the Institute's main temporal observation chamber, massive holographic displays showed the structure of these temporal waves. They appeared as intricate interference patterns, like ripples on a pond's surface, except these ripples moved through time rather than space. Each wave carried information about states of consciousness from different temporal positions. Dr. Elena Santos, the Institute's quantum consciousness specialist, discovered that the waves weren't random disturbances. They followed complex mathematical patterns that suggested purpose and organization. It was as if consciousness itself was trying to establish new forms of temporal communication. The most intriguing aspect emerged when researchers began studying how these waves affected individual human awareness. People within the influence of strong temporal resonances reported experiencing what Dr. Santos termed temporal echoes, moments where they could sense the emotional and mental states of people from other times. The Institute's temporal imaging systems revealed that the waves were creating what they called consciousness interference patterns, regions where different temporal states of awareness overlapped and interacted. These patterns seemed to be strengthening certain possibilities while weakening others, affecting the probability structure of reality itself. Dr. Foster's team made a breakthrough when they realized the temporal resonance wave wasn't just a phenomenon they were observing, it was actively responding to their observations. The act of studying the waves was itself generating new patterns of temporal resonance, creating a feedback loop between consciousness and time. In the facility's Quantum Computation Center, AI systems began detecting higher order patterns in the temporal waves. These patterns suggested the emergence of what researchers called temporal consciousness networks, interconnected fields of awareness that spanned multiple time frames simultaneously. The implications for human evolution were significant. The waves appeared to be creating new possibilities for consciousness to operate across time, potentially allowing for forms of awareness that transcended traditional temporal limitations. It wasn't just about perceiving time differently. It was about consciousness actively participating in temporal dynamics. Dr. Jennifer Chen, the Institute's evolutionary dynamics specialist, observed that exposure to the temporal waves was causing subtle changes in how people processed temporal information. Our minds are adapting to perceive and interact with time in new ways, she noted. We're developing cognitive abilities that might have seemed impossible before. Within the Institute's temporal shielding chambers, designed to isolate specific temporal frequencies, researchers discovered that the waves exhibited quantum properties. They could exist in superposition, creating complex interference patterns that suggested time itself might be more quantum in nature than previously believed. The research team made a startling discovery when they realized the waves weren't just affecting human consciousness. They were beginning to influence the structure of memory and anticipation. People exposed to strong temporal resonances reported experiencing memories and predictions with unprecedented clarity and detail. Dr. Foster's temporal mechanics lab detected what they called consciousness coherence zones, regions where the waves created stable patterns of temporal awareness. Within these zones, people reported experiencing time more fluidly, as if past, present, and future were more intimately connected. The most profound implications emerged when they began studying how the waves affected collective consciousness. The temporal resonances seemed to be creating new forms of connection between minds across time, suggesting the possibility of a truly temporally distributed form of awareness. As the phenomenon continued to develop, researchers observed that the waves were becoming more organized and coherent. They began to suspect that what they were witnessing wasn't just a new physical phenomenon. It was the emergence of a new form of temporal organization driven by consciousness itself. In our next exploration, we'll examine the quantum empathy field, where human emotional states began creating unprecedented forms of connection across space and time. These connections would challenge our understanding of consciousness and reveal new possibilities for human experience and evolution. The quantum empathy field manifested at the Emotional Intelligence Research Center in Neo Mumbai, where scientists had been studying the quantum properties of human emotions. Dr. Amrita Patel first noticed unusual patterns in the center's quantum emotional sensors, patterns that suggested human feelings were creating previously unknown forms of quantum entanglement. The phenomenon began during a routine emotional resonance study. The center's advanced empathy measurement systems detected what appeared to be quantum fields generated by emotional states, fields that could connect and influence people across vast distances. These weren't just traditional emotional bonds. They were quantum-level connections that transcended normal spatial limitations. What we're seeing isn't just emotional contagion, Dr. Patel explained to her colleagues. These are quantum-entangled emotional states that maintain coherence across space and time. People are beginning to share feelings at a fundamental quantum level, creating a new type of emotional consciousness. In the center's primary observation chamber, quantum imaging systems revealed the structure of these emotional fields. They appeared as intricate webs of quantum energy, with each node representing an individual's emotional state, and the connections between them showing the flow of empathic information through the quantum network. Dr. David Chen, the center's quantum psychology specialist, discovered that these emotional quantum states exhibited properties previously thought impossible in biological systems. They maintained coherence at room temperature and could transmit emotional information instantly across any distance, defying classical limitations. The most fascinating aspect emerged when researchers began studying how these quantum emotional states affected human consciousness. People within the influence of strong empathic fields reported experiencing others' emotions with unprecedented clarity and depth, as if emotional barriers between individuals were becoming permeable. The center's quantum computation arrays detected complex patterns in these emotional fields that suggested they were self-organizing into higher-order structures. These patterns indicated the emergence of what researchers termed collective emotional states, shared feelings that existed at a quantum level across multiple individuals. Dr. Patel's team made a breakthrough when they realized the quantum empathy field wasn't just connecting emotions. It was creating new forms of emotional experience that transcended individual perspective. People began reporting emotional states that couldn't be described in traditional terms, as if they were experiencing feelings that required a collective consciousness to exist. In the facility's quantum resonance chambers, designed to study these new emotional states, researchers observed how the fields affected human interaction. They discovered that exposure to strong empathic fields enhanced people's ability to understand and share others' emotional experiences, creating deeper levels of connection and understanding. The implications for human society were profound. The quantum emotional networks appeared to be creating new possibilities for human connection and cooperation, potentially transforming how people related to each other at the most fundamental level. It wasn't just about feeling what others felt. It was about experiencing emotion in an entirely new way. Dr. Sarah Goldstein, the center's social dynamics specialist, observed that these quantum emotional connections were beginning to influence group behavior in unexpected ways. We're seeing the emergence of what might be called emotional superorganisms, she noted. Groups of people whose emotional states are so deeply connected that they function as a single emotional entity. Within the center's secure research zones, scientists discovered that the emotional quantum fields exhibited remarkable stability and persistence. Once formed, these emotional connections could maintain themselves indefinitely, suggesting the possibility of permanent quantum bonds between individuals. The research team made a startling discovery when they realized the fields weren't just connecting current emotional states. They were beginning to influence emotional development and evolution. People exposed to strong empathic fields showed accelerated development of emotional intelligence and understanding. Dr. Patel's Quantum Emotions Lab detected what they called emotional coherence zones, regions where the quantum fields created stable patterns of shared feeling. Within these zones, people reported experiencing emotions with unprecedented clarity and depth, as if their capacity for feeling had been enhanced. The most significant implications emerged when they began studying how these quantum emotional states affected collective decision-making and social organization. The fields appeared to be creating new forms of emotional consensus, allowing groups to achieve levels of understanding and cooperation previously thought impossible. As the phenomenon continued to develop, researchers observed that the quantum empathy field was becoming more sophisticated and nuanced. It wasn't just transmitting basic emotions, it was creating complex emotional landscapes that could be shared and explored by multiple consciousness simultaneously. In our next exploration, we'll examine the consciousness evolution nexus, where human awareness began developing new capabilities that suggested the emergence of a post-human form of consciousness. This transformation would challenge our understanding of what it means to be human and reveal new possibilities for conscious experience. The consciousness evolution nexus first manifested at the Advanced Human Potential Institute in Cape Town, where researchers had been tracking unprecedented changes in human cognitive capabilities. Dr. Nkosi Mbeki identified patterns suggesting that human consciousness was undergoing a fundamental transformation, evolving beyond its traditional limitations. The phenomenon became apparent when the Institute's advanced consciousness monitoring systems detected unusual neural patterns in test subjects. These patterns indicated the emergence of cognitive abilities that exceeded normal human parameters, suggesting the beginning of what Dr. Mbeki termed consciousness acceleration. We're witnessing the birth of post-human awareness, Dr. Mbeki announced during an emergency research summit. These aren't just enhanced versions of existing human capabilities. They represent entirely new forms of consciousness that operate according to principles. We're witnessing the birth of post-human awareness, Dr. Mbeki announced during an emergency research summit. These aren't just enhanced versions of existing human capabilities. They represent entirely new forms of consciousness that operate according to principles we're only beginning to understand. In the Institute's primary research chamber, quantum neural imaging systems revealed that these new patterns of consciousness weren't limited to individual brains. They appeared to exist in a distributed state across multiple minds, creating what researchers called consciousness matrices, interconnected fields of awareness that transcended individual neural architecture. Dr. Isabella Romano, the Institute's cognitive evolution specialist, discovered that these new forms of consciousness exhibited properties that seemed to violate traditional understanding of human awareness. They could process information in multiple dimensional frameworks simultaneously and access states of perception previously thought impossible. The most intriguing aspect emerged when researchers began studying how these evolved states of consciousness interacted with reality itself. Subjects displaying advanced consciousness patterns showed the ability to perceive and influence quantum probabilities directly, suggesting a deep connection between evolved awareness and the fundamental structure of the universe. The Institute's quantum computation systems detected what appeared to be new forms of information processing emerging within these evolved consciousness states. These weren't just faster or more efficient versions of human thought. They represented entirely new ways of understanding and interacting with reality. Dr. Mbecki's team made a breakthrough when they realized the consciousness evolution nexus wasn't just affecting individual minds, it was creating new forms of collective awareness that operated at higher levels of organization than traditional human consciousness. These collective states maintained individual identity while enabling unprecedented levels of shared understanding and cooperation. In the facility's advanced meditation chambers, designed to study these evolved states, researchers observed how the new forms of consciousness affected human perception and experience. They discovered that evolved awareness could operate simultaneously across multiple levels of reality, integrating information from quantum and classical domains seamlessly. The implications for human society were profound. As more people began developing these enhanced states of consciousness, traditional social structures and ways of organizing human activity began to seem increasingly obsolete. New forms of organization emerged that better reflected the capabilities of evolved awareness. Dr. Zhang Wei, the Institute's social transformation specialist, observed that these changes were creating what she called consciousness networks, self-organizing systems of evolved awareness that could coordinate complex activities without traditional hierarchical structures. We're seeing the emergence of a new kind of social organization, she noted, one based on direct consciousness interaction rather than external systems of control. Within the Institute's secure research zones, scientists discovered that the evolved consciousness states were becoming more stable and persistent. What began as temporary shifts in awareness began developing into permanent transformations, suggesting that humanity might be approaching a fundamental evolutionary threshold. The research team made a startling discovery when they realized the nexus wasn't just affecting adult minds. Children born during this period showed natural tendencies toward these evolved states of consciousness. Their brains seemed pre-wired for the new capabilities, suggesting a genetic component to the transformation. Dr. Mbecki's Consciousness Evolution Lab detected what they called transformation zones, regions where the presence of evolved consciousness created fields that facilitated similar transformations in others. These zones appeared to be expanding, suggesting that the evolution of consciousness might have reached a self-sustaining phase. The most significant implications emerged when they began studying how these evolved states of consciousness affected human potential and development. People experiencing these transformations showed remarkable increases in creativity, problem-solving ability, and emotional intelligence, suggesting that human potential might be far greater than previously imagined. As the phenomenon continued to develop, researchers observed that the consciousness evolution nexus was creating increasingly sophisticated and nuanced forms of awareness. These weren't just enhanced versions of human consciousness. They represented the emergence of entirely new categories of conscious experience and understanding. In our next exploration, we'll examine the quantum identity matrix, where individual consciousness began developing the ability to exist in multiple states simultaneously, challenging our understanding of personal identity and the nature of self. The quantum identity matrix emerged at the Institute for Advanced Consciousness Studies in Neo, Singapore, where researchers had been investigating the quantum properties of personal identity. Dr. Lin Chen first detected unusual patterns in the Institute's quantum consciousness scanners that suggested human identity was beginning to exist in multiple quantum states simultaneously. The phenomenon was first observed during an experimental consciousness mapping session. The Institute's quantum identity sensors detected what appeared to be quantum superposition states within individual consciousness, states that allowed a single person's identity to exist in multiple configurations simultaneously while maintaining coherence. What we're witnessing isn't just multiple personality states. Dr. Lin explained to her research team, these are quantum-level identity configurations that allow consciousness to exist in multiple states of being simultaneously. The traditional concept of a single fixed identity is being transcended by quantum mechanics of consciousness. In the Institute's main observation chamber, advanced quantum imaging systems revealed the structure of these identity states. They appeared as intricate quantum probability clouds, with each potential state of identity existing simultaneously until interaction with other consciousness caused what researchers termed identity collapse into specific configurations. Dr. Marcus Thompson, the Institute's quantum psychology specialist, discovered that these quantum identity states weren't random or chaotic. They followed complex mathematical patterns that suggested purposeful organization, as if consciousness was naturally evolving to utilize quantum properties for enhanced self-expression. The most fascinating aspect emerged when researchers began studying how these quantum identity states affected human experience and interaction. People exhibiting strong quantum identity characteristics reported being able to experience multiple perspectives and ways of being simultaneously, while maintaining a coherent sense of self that transcended individual states. The Institute's quantum computation arrays detected patterns suggesting that these quantum identity states were creating new possibilities for human consciousness. These patterns indicated the emergence of what researchers called quantum personality networks, interconnected states of being that could be accessed and expressed by individual consciousness. Dr. Lin's team made a breakthrough when they realized the quantum identity matrix wasn't just allowing for multiple simultaneous states, it was creating new forms of identity that couldn't exist within classical limitations. People began experiencing states of being that required quantum superposition to exist, transcending traditional concepts of individual identity. In the facility's quantum identity chambers, designed to study these new states of being, researchers observed how the matrix affected human self-perception and interaction. They discovered that exposure to strong quantum identity fields enhanced people's ability to understand and experience different states of being while maintaining psychological coherence. The implications for human psychology were profound. The quantum identity states appeared to be creating new possibilities for personal growth and transformation, potentially revolutionizing how humans understood and experienced their own existence. It wasn't just about having multiple personalities. It was about experiencing identity itself in an entirely new way. Dr. Sophia Patel, the Institute's human development specialist, observed that these quantum identity states were beginning to influence how people developed and matured psychologically. We're seeing the emergence of what might be called quantum personalities, she noted. Individuals whose sense of self naturally exists across multiple quantum states while maintaining integration and coherence. Within the Institute's secure research zones, scientists discovered that the quantum identity states exhibited remarkable stability despite their complex nature. Once established, these quantum personality configurations could maintain themselves indefinitely, suggesting the possibility of permanent quantum-level identity expansion. The research team made a startling discovery when they realized the matrix wasn't just affecting individual identity, it was beginning to influence collective identity formation. Groups of people began developing quantum-entangled identity states, creating new forms of collective consciousness that maintained both individual and group coherence. Dr. Lin's Quantum Identity Lab detected what they called identity resonance zones, regions where quantum identity states created stable patterns of shared being. Within these zones, people reported experiencing unprecedented levels of empathy and understanding, as if they could directly experience others' states of being. The most significant implications emerged when they began studying how these quantum identity states affected human relationships and social organization. The matrix appeared to be creating new forms of connection and understanding between individuals based on direct quantum-level identity interaction rather than traditional social mechanisms. As the phenomenon continued to develop, researchers observed that the quantum identity matrix was becoming more sophisticated and nuanced. It wasn't just creating multiple simultaneous states. It was generating entirely new possibilities for human identity and consciousness that transcended classical limitations of self. In our next exploration, we'll examine the temporal identity wave, where human consciousness began developing the ability to maintain coherent identity across multiple time frames, challenging our understanding of personal continuity and the nature of time itself. The temporal identity wave manifested at the Institute for Temporal Psychology in Neo-Sydney, where scientists had been studying the relationship between consciousness and time. Dr. Emma Sullivan noticed unprecedented patterns in the Institute's temporal consciousness monitors that suggested human identity was beginning to exist coherently across multiple time frames simultaneously. The phenomenon first became apparent during a longitudinal consciousness study. The Institute's temporal scanners detected what appeared to be consciousness signatures, maintaining continuity across different temporal states, not just through memory, but through actual quantum temporal coherence of identity. This goes beyond traditional psychological continuity, Dr. Sullivan explained to her colleagues. We're observing consciousness maintaining quantum coherence across different temporal states. Individual identity is no longer confined to a single moment in time. It's existing as a coherent field across multiple temporal positions simultaneously. In the Institute's temporal observation chamber, advanced chronometric imaging systems revealed the structure of these temporal identity states. They appeared as continuous waves of consciousness extending both forward and backward through time, maintaining quantum coherence despite temporal separation. Dr. Michael Khoury, the Institute's quantum temporality specialist, discovered that these temporal identity waves weren't random fluctuations. They followed precise mathematical patterns that suggested purposeful organization, as if consciousness was naturally evolving to transcend traditional temporal limitations. The most intriguing aspect emerged when researchers began studying how these temporal identity states affected human experience. People exhibiting strong temporal coherence reported being able to maintain continuous awareness across different temporal states, experiencing past, present, and future as interconnected aspects of a single identity field. The Institute's quantum temporal processors detected complex patterns, suggesting that these temporal identity states were creating new possibilities for consciousness. These patterns indicated the emergence of what researchers called temporal consciousness networks, interconnected states of awareness that maintained coherence across different time frames. Dr. Sullivan's team made a breakthrough when they realized the temporal identity wave wasn't just maintaining consciousness across time. It was creating new forms of temporal experience that couldn't exist within classical temporal limitations. People began experiencing states of temporal awareness that required quantum coherence to exist. In the facility's temporal coherence chambers, designed to study these new states of temporal consciousness, researchers observed how the wave affected human perception of time and identity. They discovered that exposure to strong temporal coherence fields enhanced people's ability to maintain consistent identity across different temporal states. The implications for human psychology were revolutionary. The temporal identity states appeared to be creating new possibilities for personal continuity and development, potentially transforming how humans understood their existence through time. It wasn't just about remembering the past or anticipating the future. It was about experiencing temporal existence in an entirely new way. Dr. Rachel Chen, the Institute's consciousness evolution specialist, observed that these temporal identity states were beginning to influence how people developed psychologically through time. We're witnessing the emergence of what might be called temporal consciousness, she noted, a form of awareness that naturally exists across multiple temporal states while maintaining integration and coherence. Within the Institute's secure research zones, scientists discovered that the temporal identity states exhibited remarkable stability despite their complex nature. Once established, these temporal consciousness configurations could maintain themselves across extended periods, suggesting the possibility of permanent temporal consciousness expansion. The research team made a startling discovery when they realized the wave wasn't just affecting individual temporal experience, it was beginning to influence collective temporal consciousness. Groups of people began developing temporally entangled states of awareness, creating new forms of collective experience that transcended normal temporal limitations. Dr. Sullivan's temporal psychology lab detected what they called temporal resonance zones, regions where temporal identity waves created stable patterns of shared temporal experience. Within these zones, people reported experiencing unprecedented levels of temporal awareness, as if they could directly experience different temporal states simultaneously. The most significant implications emerged when they began studying how these temporal identity states affected human relationships and social organization. The wave appeared to be creating new forms of temporal connection between individuals based on shared temporal consciousness rather than traditional social mechanisms. As the phenomenon continued to develop, researchers observed that the temporal identity wave was becoming more sophisticated and nuanced. It wasn't just maintaining consciousness across time. It was generating entirely new possibilities for human temporal experience that transcended classical limitations of sequential time. In our next exploration, we'll examine the quantum social field, where human collective consciousness began developing new forms of social organization that operated according to quantum principles, challenging our understanding of society and human cooperation. The quantum social field emerged at the Institute for Collective Consciousness Studies in New Delhi, where researchers had been investigating the quantum properties of human social interaction. Dr. Arun Patel first detected unusual patterns in the Institute's social coherence sensors that suggested human society was beginning to organize itself according to quantum principles. The phenomenon became evident during a large-scale social dynamics study. The Institute's quantum social monitors detected what appeared to be quantum entanglement patterns forming between groups of people, creating coherent social structures that operated beyond classical organizational principles. These aren't traditional social networks, Dr. Patel explained to his research team. We're observing quantum-level social organization where groups of people are becoming entangled in ways that transcend classical social dynamics. Society itself is beginning to operate as a quantum system. In the Institute's main observation center, quantum social imaging systems revealed the structure of these new social patterns. They appeared as complex quantum interference patterns, with social relationships and interactions showing properties of superposition and entanglement that defied classical social theory. Dr. Sarah Henderson, the Institute's quantum sociology specialist, discovered that these social quantum states weren't chaotic or random. They followed sophisticated organizational patterns that suggested the emergence of a new form of social order based on quantum principles rather than traditional hierarchical structures. The most fascinating aspect emerged when researchers began studying how these quantum social states affected human interaction and organization. Groups exhibiting strong quantum social coherence showed unprecedented levels of coordination and cooperation, operating with a degree of unity that seemed impossible under classical social models. The Institute's quantum computation arrays detected patterns suggesting that these quantum social states were creating new possibilities for human collaboration. These patterns indicated the emergence of what researchers called quantum social networks, groups of people whose interactions were governed by quantum principles rather than classical social rules. Dr. Patel's team made a breakthrough when they realized the quantum social field wasn't just affecting how people interacted. It was creating new forms of social organization that couldn't exist within classical limitations. Communities began developing social structures that required quantum coherence to function, transcending traditional organizational boundaries. In the facility's social coherence chambers, designed to study these new forms of organization, researchers observed how the field affected group dynamics and decision-making. They discovered that exposure to strong quantum social fields enhanced people's ability to coordinate and cooperate without traditional communication or organizational structures. The implications for human society were profound. The quantum social states appeared to be creating new possibilities for collective action and organization, potentially revolutionizing how humans structured their communities and institutions. It wasn't just about improved communication. It was about experiencing social connection in an entirely new way. Dr. Maria Rodriguez, the Institute's social evolution specialist, observed that these quantum social states were beginning to influence how communities developed and evolved. We're seeing the emergence of what might be called quantum societies, she noted. Social systems that naturally organize themselves according to quantum principles while maintaining both individual autonomy and collective coherence. Within the Institute's secure research zones, scientists discovered that the quantum social states exhibited remarkable stability despite their complex nature. Once established, these quantum social configurations could maintain themselves indefinitely, suggesting the possibility of permanent quantum-level social transformation. The research team made a startling discovery when they realized the field wasn't just affecting small groups. It was beginning to influence larger-scale social organization. Cities and regions began developing quantum-entangled social structures, creating new forms of collective organization that maintained coherence across vast distances and populations. Dr. Patel's quantum sociology lab detected what they called social coherence zones, regions where quantum social fields created stable patterns of collective organization. Within these zones, communities reported experiencing unprecedented levels of social harmony and coordination, as if they could directly sense and respond to collective needs and intentions. The most significant implications emerged when they began studying how these quantum social states affected human culture and civilization. The field appeared to be creating new forms of cultural evolution based on quantum principles, suggesting the possibility of societies that could adapt and evolve with unprecedented speed and efficiency. As the phenomenon continued to develop, researchers observed that the quantum social field was becoming more sophisticated and nuanced. It wasn't just creating better organized societies. It was generating entirely new possibilities for human collective existence that transcended classical limitations of social organization. In our next exploration, we'll examine the consciousness adaptation wave, where human awareness began developing new capabilities for rapid evolutionary response to environmental and social changes, challenging our understanding of human adaptability and evolution. The consciousness adaptation wave manifested at the Center for Evolutionary Consciousness in Neo-Vancouver, where scientists had been studying rapid changes in human cognitive adaptation. Dr. Maya Henderson first identified unprecedented patterns in the center's consciousness evolution monitors that suggested human awareness was developing accelerated adaptive capabilities. The phenomenon became apparent during a longitudinal study of cognitive plasticity. The center's advanced neural monitoring systems detected what appeared to be consciousness, developing the ability to rapidly reconfigure itself in response to new challenges and environmental conditions, far exceeding normal adaptive capabilities. We're observing something beyond traditional neuroplasticity, Dr. Henderson explained during an emergency research briefing. Human consciousness is developing the ability to undergo directed evolution in real time, adapting to new conditions with unprecedented speed and precision. It's as if consciousness itself has become evolutionary aware. In the center's primary research chamber, advanced neural imaging systems revealed the structure of these adaptive processes. They appeared as dynamic neural reorganization patterns that could rapidly reconfigure consciousness in response to new challenges, creating optimized cognitive configurations for specific situations. Dr. James Chen, the center's cognitive evolution specialist, discovered that these adaptive states weren't random mutations. They followed precise developmental patterns that suggested purposeful evolution, as if consciousness had developed the ability to direct its own evolutionary trajectory in response to environmental demands. The most intriguing aspect emerged when researchers began studying how these adaptive capabilities affected human learning and development. People exhibiting strong adaptive consciousness showed the ability to rapidly acquire new skills and understanding, developing expertise in new areas at rates previously thought impossible. The center's quantum computation systems detected complex patterns, suggesting that these adaptive states were creating new possibilities for human evolution. These patterns indicated the emergence of what researchers called evolutionary consciousness networks, systems of awareness that could rapidly evolve in response to collective challenges and opportunities. Dr. Henderson's team made a breakthrough when they realized the consciousness adaptation wave wasn't just accelerating learning. It was creating new forms of cognitive development that couldn't exist within traditional evolutionary timeframes. People began developing mental capabilities that seemed to emerge through immediate adaptive response rather than gradual evolution. In the facility's adaptation chambers, designed to study these new evolutionary capabilities, researchers observed how the wave affected human cognitive development. They discovered that exposure to strong adaptive fields enhanced people's ability to rapidly reconfigure their consciousness in response to new challenges and opportunities. The implications for human potential were revolutionary. The adaptive consciousness states appeared to be creating new possibilities for human development and evolution, potentially transforming how humans responded to challenges and acquired new capabilities. It wasn't just about learning faster. It was about evolving consciousness itself in real time. Dr. Sophia Patel, the center's human potential specialist, observed that these adaptive states were beginning to influence how people developed throughout their lives. We're witnessing the emergence of what might be called evolutionary consciousness, she noted, a form of awareness that can consciously direct its own evolution in response to environmental demands. Within the center's secure research zones, scientists discovered that the adaptive consciousness states exhibited remarkable stability despite their dynamic nature. Once developed, these enhanced adaptive capabilities became permanent features of consciousness, suggesting the possibility of cumulative evolutionary advancement. The research team made a startling discovery when they realized the wave wasn't just affecting individual adaptation, it was beginning to influence collective evolutionary responses. Groups of people began developing synchronized adaptive capabilities, creating new forms of collective evolution that could respond to challenges at a social level. Dr. Henderson's evolutionary psychology lab detected what they called adaptation resonance zones, regions where adaptive consciousness waves created stable patterns of accelerated evolution. Within these zones, people reported experiencing unprecedented levels of cognitive flexibility and adaptive response, as if they could consciously direct their own evolution. The most significant implications emerged when they began studying how these adaptive consciousness states affected human civilization and progress. The wave appeared to be creating new possibilities for rapid cultural and technological evolution, suggesting the potential for societies that could consciously direct their own development. As the phenomenon continued to develop, researchers observed that the consciousness adaptation wave was becoming more sophisticated and nuanced. It wasn't just enabling faster adaptation, it was generating entirely new possibilities for human evolution that transcended classical limitations of development and change. In our next exploration, we'll examine the quantum memory matrix, where human consciousness began developing new capabilities for storing and accessing information across quantum states, challenging our understanding of memory and knowledge. The quantum memory matrix emerged at the Institute for Advanced Cognitive Sciences in Neo-Tokyo, where researchers had been investigating revolutionary changes in human memory capabilities. Dr. Hiroshi Tanaka first detected unusual patterns in the Institute's quantum neural scanners that suggested human consciousness was developing new ways of storing and accessing information through quantum states. The phenomenon first manifested during a study of memory enhancement technologies. The Institute's quantum memory sensors detected what appeared to be information being stored and retrieved through quantum superposition states within human consciousness, transcending the limitations of classical neural storage. This represents a fundamental transformation in how human memory functions. Dr. Tanaka explained to the assembled research team, "We're observing memory storage and retrieval operating through quantum principles, allowing access to exponentially more information than classical neural networks could support. Information isn't just being stored, it's existing in quantum superposition states." In the Institute's quantum memory chamber, advanced scanning systems revealed the structure of these new memory states. They appeared as complex quantum interference patterns, with information existing simultaneously across multiple quantum states until accessed by consciousness, creating what researchers termed quantum memory coherence. Dr. Elena Blackwood, the Institute's quantum information specialist, discovered that these memory states weren't simply larger storage systems. They represented an entirely new paradigm of information processing that allowed consciousness to access vast amounts of information instantaneously through quantum entanglement. The most fascinating aspect emerged when researchers began studying how these quantum memory states affected human knowledge and learning. People exhibiting strong quantum memory characteristics showed the ability to access and integrate information in ways that seemed to transcend traditional cognitive limitations. The Institute's quantum computation arrays detected patterns suggesting that these quantum memory states were creating new possibilities for human knowledge. These patterns indicated the emergence of what researchers called quantum knowledge networks, interconnected fields of information that could be accessed through quantum consciousness states. Dr. Tanaka's team made a breakthrough when they realized the quantum memory matrix wasn't just enhancing existing memory capabilities. It was creating new forms of information storage and retrieval that couldn't exist within classical limitations. People began experiencing forms of knowledge access that required quantum processes to function. In the facility's quantum information chambers, designed to study these new memory states, researchers observed how the matrix affected human learning and recall. They discovered that exposure to strong quantum memory fields enhanced people's ability to access and integrate vast amounts of information instantaneously. The implications for human knowledge were profound. The quantum memory states appeared to be creating new possibilities for information storage and retrieval, potentially revolutionizing how humans learned and understood their world. It wasn't just about remembering more. It was about accessing information in an entirely new way. Dr. Sarah Chen, the Institute's cognitive evolution specialist, observed that these quantum memory states were beginning to influence how people processed and integrated knowledge. We're seeing the emergence of what might be called quantum cognition, she noted, a form of thinking that naturally operates through quantum information principles rather than classical neural processing. Within the Institute's secure research zones, scientists discovered that the quantum memory states exhibited remarkable stability despite their complex nature. Once established, these quantum information configurations could maintain themselves indefinitely, suggesting the possibility of permanent quantum-level memory enhancement. The research team made a startling discovery when they realized the matrix wasn't just affecting individual memory, it was beginning to influence collective knowledge, storage, and retrieval. Groups of people began developing shared quantum memory states, creating new forms of collective knowledge that could be accessed by multiple consciousness simultaneously. Dr. Tanaka's quantum memory lab detected what they called information resonance zones, regions where quantum memory states created stable patterns of shared knowledge. Within these zones, people reported experiencing unprecedented access to collective information, as if they could directly tap into a shared field of knowledge. The most significant implications emerged when they began studying how these quantum memory states affected human culture and learning. The matrix appeared to be creating new forms of knowledge, transmission, and preservation based on quantum principles, suggesting the possibility of societies that could maintain and access vast amounts of information without traditional storage systems. As the phenomenon continued to develop, researchers observed that the quantum memory matrix was becoming more sophisticated and nuanced. It wasn't just creating better memory storage, it was generating entirely new possibilities for human knowledge and understanding that transcended classical limitations of information processing. In our next exploration, we'll examine the consciousness integration wave, where human awareness began developing new capabilities for synthesizing and harmonizing different aspects of experience and knowledge, challenging our understanding of cognitive integration and unified consciousness. The consciousness integration wave manifested at the Institute for Unified Consciousness Studies in Cape Town, where researchers had been studying the emergence of enhanced cognitive synthesis capabilities. Dr. Amara Okonjo first identified unprecedented patterns in the Institute's consciousness coherence monitors that suggested human awareness was developing new abilities to integrate diverse aspects of experience and knowledge. The phenomenon became evident during a study of consciousness unification processes. The Institute's advanced neural integration scanners detected what appeared to be consciousness, developing the ability to simultaneously process and synthesize multiple streams of information and experience at previously impossible levels of complexity. What we're witnessing goes beyond multitasking or parallel processing, Dr. Okonjo explained to her colleagues. Human consciousness is developing the ability to achieve complete integration across multiple domains of experience and knowledge simultaneously. It's as if consciousness has developed a new dimension of unified awareness. In the Institute's primary integration chamber, sophisticated neural mapping systems revealed the structure of these integrative processes. They appeared as highly organized patterns of neural synchronization that could maintain coherent awareness across multiple domains of experience while synthesizing them into a unified whole. Dr. Thomas Reed, the Institute's cognitive synthesis specialist, discovered that these integration states weren't simply improved mental coordination. They represented a fundamental evolution in how consciousness organized and processed experience, allowing for unprecedented levels of cognitive harmony and synthesis. The most intriguing aspect emerged when researchers began studying how these integration capabilities affected human perception and understanding. People exhibiting strong integrative consciousness showed the ability to simultaneously comprehend and synthesize complex systems of knowledge from multiple disciplines, achieving insights that transcended traditional specialized thinking. The Institute's quantum coherence processors detected complex patterns, suggesting that these integration states were creating new possibilities for human understanding. These patterns indicated the emergence of what researchers called unified consciousness networks, systems of awareness that could maintain coherent integration across multiple domains of experience and knowledge. Dr. Okonjo's team made a breakthrough when they realized the consciousness integration wave wasn't just enhancing existing cognitive abilities. It was creating new forms of mental synthesis that couldn't exist within traditional cognitive frameworks. People began experiencing states of understanding that required this enhanced integration to exist. In the facility's integration chambers, designed to study these new states of unified consciousness, researchers observed how the wave affected human cognition and perception. They discovered that exposure to strong integration fields enhanced people's ability to maintain coherent awareness across multiple domains, while synthesizing them into meaningful wholes. The implications for human understanding were revolutionary. The integrated consciousness states appeared to be creating new possibilities for knowledge synthesis and holistic understanding, potentially transforming how humans comprehended complex systems and relationships. It wasn't just about processing more information. It was about achieving a new level of cognitive synthesis. Dr. Li Wei, the Institute's consciousness evolution specialist, observed that these integration states were beginning to influence how people developed understanding throughout their lives. We're witnessing the emergence of what might be called holistic consciousness, she noted, a form of awareness that naturally integrates multiple domains of experience into coherent, unified understanding. Within the Institute's secure research zones, scientists discovered that the integration consciousness states exhibited remarkable stability despite their complexity. Once developed, these enhanced integration capabilities became permanent features of consciousness, suggesting the possibility of cumulative cognitive evolution. The research team made a startling discovery when they realized the wave wasn't just affecting individual integration, it was beginning to influence collective cognitive synthesis. Groups of people began developing synchronized integration capabilities, creating new forms of collective understanding that could comprehend and respond to complex challenges at a social level. Dr. Okonjo's cognitive synthesis lab detected what they called integration resonance zones, regions where integrated consciousness waves created stable patterns of enhanced understanding. Within these zones, people reported experiencing unprecedented levels of cognitive synthesis and holistic awareness, as if they could naturally perceive the interconnections between different domains of knowledge and experience. The most significant implications emerged when they began studying how these integrated consciousness states affected human civilization and progress. The wave appeared to be creating new possibilities for collective understanding and problem-solving, suggesting the potential for societies that could maintain coherent awareness of complex global systems and challenges. As the phenomenon continued to develop, researchers observed that the consciousness integration wave was becoming more sophisticated and nuanced. It wasn't just enabling better mental coordination, it was generating entirely new possibilities for human understanding that transcended classical limitations of cognitive integration. In our next exploration, we'll examine the quantum creativity field, where human consciousness began developing new capabilities for innovation and artistic expression that operated according to quantum principles, challenging our understanding of creativity and imagination. The quantum creativity field emerged at the Institute for Creative Consciousness in Paris, where researchers had been investigating unprecedented changes in human creative capabilities. Dr. Isabella Monet first detected extraordinary patterns in the Institute's quantum consciousness scanners that suggested human creativity was beginning to operate through quantum principles. The phenomenon first became apparent during a study of creative cognition. The Institute's quantum creative monitors detected what appeared to be creative processes occurring through quantum superposition states within human consciousness, allowing for simultaneous exploration of multiple creative possibilities in ways that transcended classical creative thinking. This represents a fundamental transformation in how human creativity functions, Dr. Monet explained during an emergency research conference. We're observing creative processes operating through quantum mechanics, allowing simultaneous exploration of infinite creative possibilities until the moment of creative collapse into a specific innovation or artistic expression. In the Institute's Quantum Creativity Chamber, advanced monitoring systems revealed the structure of these new creative states. They appeared as complex quantum interference patterns, with creative possibilities existing simultaneously across multiple quantum states, until resolved through conscious observation, creating what researchers termed quantum creative coherence. Dr. Marcus Benjamin, the Institute's quantum arts specialist, discovered that these creative states weren't simply enhanced versions of traditional creativity. They represented an entirely new paradigm of creative expression that allowed consciousness to explore vast creative possibilities simultaneously through quantum entanglement. The most fascinating aspect emerged when researchers began studying how these quantum creative states affected human innovation and artistic expression. People exhibiting strong quantum creativity characteristics showed the ability to generate unprecedented forms of art and innovation that seemed to draw from an infinite field of possibilities. The Institute's quantum computation arrays detected patterns suggesting that these quantum creative states were creating new possibilities for human expression. These patterns indicated the emergence of what researchers called quantum inspiration networks, interconnected fields of creative potential that could be accessed through quantum consciousness states. Dr. Monet's team made a breakthrough when they realized the quantum creativity field wasn't just enhancing existing creative capabilities. It was creating new forms of creative expression that couldn't exist within classical limitations. Artists and innovators began producing works that required quantum processes to conceive and execute. In the facility's quantum expression chambers, designed to study these new creative states, researchers observed how the field affected human imagination and innovation. They discovered that exposure to strong quantum creative fields enhanced people's ability to access and manifest entirely new forms of creative expression. The implications for human creativity were profound. The quantum creative states appeared to be creating new possibilities for innovation and artistic expression, potentially revolutionizing how humans approach creation and problem solving. It wasn't just about being more creative. It was about accessing creativity in an entirely new way. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the Institute's creative evolution specialist, observed that these quantum creative states were beginning to influence how people approached innovative thinking. We're seeing the emergence of what might be called quantum imagination, she noted, a form of creativity that naturally operates through quantum principles rather than classical cognitive processes. Within the Institute's secure research zones, scientists discovered that the quantum creative states exhibited remarkable stability despite their complex nature. Once established, these quantum creative configurations could maintain themselves indefinitely, suggesting the possibility of permanent quantum-level creative enhancement. The research team made a startling discovery when they realized the field wasn't just affecting individual creativity. It was beginning to influence collective creative expression. Groups of people began developing shared quantum creative states, creating new forms of collaborative innovation that transcended traditional creative boundaries. Dr. Monet's Quantum Creativity Lab detected what they called creative resonance zones, regions where quantum creative states created stable patterns of enhanced innovation. Within these zones, people reported experiencing unprecedented access to creative possibilities, as if they could directly tap into an infinite field of potential expressions. The most significant implications emerged when they began studying how these quantum creative states affected human culture and technological advancement. The field appeared to be creating new forms of innovation and artistic expression based on quantum principles, suggesting the possibility of civilizations that could maintain continuous creative evolution. As the phenomenon continued to develop, researchers observed that the quantum creativity field was becoming more sophisticated and nuanced. It wasn't just creating better art or more innovations. It was generating entirely new possibilities for human expression that transcended classical limitations of creativity and imagination. In our next exploration, we'll examine the temporal harmony wave, where human consciousness began developing new capabilities for synchronizing with natural and cosmic rhythms, challenging our understanding of time and temporal experience. The temporal harmony wave manifested at the Center for Temporal Studies in Neo-Kyoto, where researchers had been investigating unprecedented changes in human temporal perception. Dr. Kenji Yamamoto first detected unusual patterns in the center's chronometric sensors that suggested human consciousness was developing new capabilities for experiencing and interacting with time. The phenomenon became evident during a study of biological rhythms. The center's temporal monitoring systems detected what appeared to be consciousness, developing the ability to naturally synchronize with multiple layers of temporal rhythms simultaneously, from cellular cycles to cosmic frequencies. What we're observing transcends conventional temporal perception, Dr. Yamamoto explained to his research team. Human consciousness is developing the ability to harmonize with multiple temporal frequencies simultaneously, creating a new form of temporal awareness that operates at multiple scales of time. In the center's primary temporal observation chamber, advanced chronometric imaging systems revealed the structure of these temporal harmonization processes. They appeared as complex interference patterns of various biological and environmental rhythms, synchronized through consciousness in ways that suggested a fundamental evolution in human temporal experience. Dr. Maria Santos, the center's chronobiology specialist, discovered that these temporal harmony states weren't simply improved timing or rhythm perception. They represented a fundamental shift in how consciousness interacted with time itself, allowing for unprecedented levels of temporal synchronization and awareness. The most intriguing aspect emerged when researchers began studying how these temporal harmony capabilities affected human behavior and experience. People exhibiting strong temporal harmony showed the ability to naturally align their activities with optimal temporal windows, achieving extraordinary levels of efficiency and coordination with natural rhythms. The center's quantum temporal processors detected complex patterns, suggesting that these harmony states were creating new possibilities for human temporal experience. These patterns indicated the emergence of what researchers called temporal resonance networks, systems of consciousness that could maintain coherent alignment across multiple temporal scales. Dr. Yamamoto's team made a breakthrough when they realized the temporal harmony wave wasn't just enhancing existing temporal perception, it was creating new forms of temporal experience that couldn't exist within traditional frameworks of time. People began experiencing states of temporal awareness that required this enhanced harmonization to exist. In the facility's temporal harmonization chambers, designed to study these new states of temporal consciousness, researchers observed how the wave affected human perception and behavior. They discovered that exposure to strong temporal harmony fields enhanced people's ability to naturally synchronize with beneficial rhythms while maintaining awareness across multiple timescales. The implications for human experience were revolutionary. The temporal harmony states appeared to be creating new possibilities for temporal organization and coordination, potentially transforming how humans interacted with time. It wasn't just about better timing. It was about achieving a new level of temporal integration with natural and cosmic rhythms. Dr. Alexandria Chen, the center's consciousness evolution specialist, observed that these harmony states were beginning to influence how people organized their lives and activities. We're witnessing the emergence of what might be called quantum temporal awareness, she noted, a form of consciousness that naturally aligns with multiple temporal frequencies simultaneously. Within the center's secure research zones, scientists discovered that the temporal harmony states exhibited remarkable stability despite their dynamic nature. Once developed, these enhanced temporal capabilities became permanent features of consciousness, suggesting the possibility of cumulative evolution in temporal perception. The research team made a startling discovery when they realized the wave wasn't just affecting individual temporal experience. It was beginning to influence collective temporal organization. Groups of people began developing synchronized temporal harmony capabilities, creating new forms of collective rhythm that could coordinate complex social activities with natural cycles. Dr. Yamamoto's Temporal Dynamics Lab detected what they called temporal coherence zones, regions where temporal harmony waves created stable patterns of enhanced synchronization. Within these zones, people reported experiencing unprecedented levels of temporal alignment and efficiency, as if they could naturally sense and respond to optimal timing for any activity. The most significant implications emerged when they began studying how these temporal harmony states affected human civilization and progress. The wave appeared to be creating new possibilities for temporal organization and coordination, suggesting the potential for societies that could maintain natural alignment with beneficial rhythms at all scales. As the phenomenon continued to develop, researchers observed that the temporal harmony wave was becoming more sophisticated and nuanced. It wasn't just enabling better timing, it was generating entirely new possibilities for human temporal experience that transcended classical limitations of time perception. In our next exploration, we'll examine the quantum empathy field, where human consciousness began developing new capabilities for understanding and sharing emotional experiences through quantum entanglement, challenging our understanding of human connection and emotional intelligence. The quantum empathy field materialized at the Institute for Emotional Intelligence in Neo Mumbai, where researchers had been studying unprecedented changes in human emotional connectivity. Dr. Priya Sharma first detected extraordinary patterns in the Institute's quantum consciousness monitors that suggested human empathy was beginning to operate through quantum entanglement principles. The phenomenon first manifested during a study of emotional resonance. The Institute's quantum empathy sensors detected what appeared to be emotional experiences being shared through quantum entanglement states within human consciousness, allowing for direct emotional understanding that transcended traditional empathetic limitations. This represents a fundamental transformation in how human empathy functions, Dr. Sharma explained during an emergency research summit. We're observing emotional connections operating through quantum entanglement, allowing direct emotional understanding and sharing between consciousness at a level that bypasses traditional psychological barriers. In the Institute's quantum empathy chamber, advanced monitoring systems revealed the structure of these new emotional states. They appeared as intricate quantum interference patterns, with emotional experiences existing in entangled states between multiple consciousnesses, creating what researchers termed quantum emotional resonance. Dr. Michael Foster, the Institute's quantum psychology specialist, discovered that these empathetic states weren't simply enhanced versions of traditional empathy. They represented an entirely new paradigm of emotional connection that allowed consciousness to directly share and understand emotional experiences through quantum mechanisms. The most fascinating aspect emerged when researchers began studying how these quantum empathy states affected human relationships and social interaction. People exhibiting strong quantum empathy characteristics showed the ability to understand and share emotional experiences with unprecedented depth and accuracy, transcending traditional barriers to emotional understanding. The Institute's quantum computation arrays detected patterns suggesting that these quantum empathy states were creating new possibilities for human connection. These patterns indicated the emergence of what researchers called emotional entanglement networks, interconnected fields of shared emotional experience that could be accessed through quantum consciousness states. Dr. Sharma's team made a breakthrough when they realized the quantum empathy field wasn't just enhancing existing empathetic capabilities. It was creating new forms of emotional connection that couldn't exist within classical limitations. People began experiencing forms of emotional understanding that required quantum processes to function. In the facility's quantum resonance chambers, designed to study these new empathetic states, researchers observed how the field affected human emotional intelligence and connection. They discovered that exposure to strong quantum empathy fields enhanced people's ability to directly understand and share emotional experiences with others. The implications for human relationships were profound. The quantum empathy states appeared to be creating new possibilities for emotional connection and understanding, potentially revolutionizing how humans related to each other. It wasn't just about being more empathetic. It was about experiencing emotions in an entirely new way. Dr. Ana Rodriguez, the Institute's social evolution specialist, observed that these quantum empathy states were beginning to influence how people formed and maintained relationships. We're seeing the emergence of what might be called quantum emotional intelligence, she noted, a form of emotional awareness that naturally operates through quantum entanglement rather than classical psychological processes. Within the Institute's secure research zones, scientists discovered that the quantum empathy states exhibited remarkable stability despite their complex nature. Once established, these quantum emotional configurations could maintain themselves indefinitely, suggesting the possibility of permanent quantum-level enhancement of emotional connection. The research team made a startling discovery when they realized the field wasn't just affecting individual empathy, it was beginning to influence collective emotional understanding. Groups of people began developing shared quantum empathy states, creating new forms of collective emotional intelligence that could respond to social challenges with unprecedented understanding. Dr. Sharma's quantum psychology lab detected what they called empathy resonance zones, regions where quantum empathy states created stable patterns of enhanced emotional connection. Within these zones, people reported experiencing unprecedented access to shared emotional understanding, as if they could directly experience the emotional states of others. The most significant implications emerged when they began studying how these quantum empathy states affected human society and culture. The field appeared to be creating new forms of social connection and understanding based on quantum principles, suggesting the possibility of civilizations that could maintain deep emotional harmony through direct quantum emotional sharing. As the phenomenon continued to develop, researchers observed that the quantum empathy field was becoming more sophisticated and nuanced. It wasn't just creating better emotional understanding. It was generating entirely new possibilities for human connection that transcended classical limitations of empathy and emotional intelligence. In our next exploration, we'll examine the consciousness synchronization wave, where human awareness began developing new capabilities for coordinating collective consciousness and shared experience, challenging our understanding of individual and group consciousness. The consciousness synchronization wave emerged at the Global Institute for Collective Intelligence in Neo, Singapore, where researchers had been investigating unprecedented changes in group consciousness dynamics. Dr. Lian Chen first detected remarkable patterns in the Institute's consciousness coherence monitors that suggested human awareness was developing new capabilities for collective synchronization. The phenomenon became evident during a study of group consciousness dynamics. The Institute's neural synchronization arrays detected what appeared to be consciousness developing the ability to naturally form coherent, collective awareness states, enabling groups to achieve unprecedented levels of coordination and shared understanding. What we're witnessing goes beyond traditional group dynamics or collective behavior, Dr. Chen explained to the assembled research consortium. Human consciousness is developing the ability to form synchronized networks of awareness that function as unified fields of collective intelligence, operating with remarkable coherence and coordination. In the Institute's primary synchronization chamber, advanced consciousness mapping systems revealed the structure of these collective synchronization processes. They appeared as complex patterns of neural coherence that could maintain stable synchronization across multiple individuals, creating what researchers termed collective consciousness fields. Dr. James Harper, the Institute's collective intelligence specialist, discovered that these synchronization states weren't simply improved group coordination. They represented a fundamental evolution in how consciousness could organize itself collectively, allowing for unprecedented levels of shared awareness and coordinated action. The most intriguing aspect emerged when researchers began studying how these synchronization capabilities affected human collaboration and collective decision-making. Groups exhibiting strong consciousness synchronization showed the ability to achieve complex coordination without explicit communication, functioning with a level of unity previously thought impossible. The Institute's quantum coherence processors detected intricate patterns, suggesting that these synchronization states were creating new possibilities for collective human experience. These patterns indicated the emergence of what researchers called consciousness resonance networks, systems of shared awareness that could maintain coherent coordination across multiple individuals simultaneously. Dr. Chen's team made a breakthrough when they realized the consciousness synchronization wave wasn't just enhancing existing group dynamics. It was creating new forms of collective awareness that couldn't exist within traditional frameworks of consciousness. Groups began experiencing states of unified awareness that required this enhanced synchronization to exist. In the facility's synchronization chambers, designed to study these new states of collective consciousness, researchers observed how the wave affected group behavior and coordination. They discovered that exposure to strong synchronization fields enhanced people's ability to naturally align their awareness and actions with others, creating seamless collective responses to complex situations. The implications for human society were revolutionary. The synchronized consciousness states appeared to be creating new possibilities for collective organization and coordination, potentially transforming how humans worked together. It wasn't just about better cooperation. It was about achieving a new level of collective consciousness. Dr. Sophia Patel, the Institute's social evolution specialist, observed that these synchronization states were beginning to influence how people organize themselves in groups. We're witnessing the emergence of what might be called quantum social coherence, she noted, a form of collective awareness that naturally maintains synchronization across multiple consciousness states simultaneously. Within the Institute's secure research zones, scientists discovered that the synchronization states exhibited remarkable stability despite their complexity. Once established, these enhanced collective capabilities became persistent features of group consciousness, suggesting the possibility of permanent evolution in human collective awareness. The research team made a startling discovery when they realized the wave wasn't just affecting small group synchronization, it was beginning to influence larger-scale collective consciousness. Communities began developing synchronized awareness capabilities, creating new forms of social organization that could respond to challenges with unprecedented coordination. Dr. Chen's Collective Dynamics Lab detected what they called social coherence zones, regions where consciousness synchronization waves created stable patterns of enhanced collective awareness. Within these zones, groups reported experiencing unprecedented levels of coordination and shared understanding, as if they could naturally sense and respond to collective needs and opportunities. The most significant implications emerged when they began studying how these synchronized consciousness states affected human civilization and progress. The wave appeared to be creating new possibilities for collective organization and decision-making, suggesting the potential for societies that could maintain coherent awareness and coordination at unprecedented scales. As the phenomenon continued to develop, researchers observed that the consciousness synchronization wave was becoming more sophisticated and nuanced. It wasn't just enabling better group coordination. It was generating entirely new possibilities for human collective experience that transcended classical limitations of social organization. In our next exploration, we'll examine the quantum healing field, where human consciousness began developing new capabilities for health restoration and biological regulation through quantum principles, challenging our understanding of healing and wellness. The quantum healing field manifested at the Advanced Institute for Bioconscious Medicine in Neo-Tokyo, where researchers had been studying unprecedented changes in human healing capabilities. Dr. Hiroshi Tanaka first detected extraordinary patterns in the Institute's quantum biology monitors that suggested human consciousness was developing new abilities to influence health through quantum mechanisms. The phenomenon first became apparent during a study of consciousness-mediated healing. The Institute's quantum biological sensors detected what appeared to be healing processes occurring through quantum field interactions between consciousness and physical biology, allowing for direct influence over cellular and systemic health processes. This represents a fundamental shift in how biological healing functions, Dr. Tanaka explained during an urgent medical conference. We're observing healing processes operating through quantum field interactions, allowing consciousness to directly influence biological processes at the quantum level, bypassing traditional biochemical pathways. In the Institute's quantum healing chamber, sophisticated monitoring systems revealed the structure of these new healing states. They appeared as complex quantum coherence patterns, with healing intentions manifesting through quantum field effects that could directly influence biological processes, creating what researchers termed quantum biological resonance. Dr. Sarah Anderson, the Institute's quantum medicine specialist, discovered that these healing states weren't simply enhanced versions of traditional healing responses. They represented an entirely new paradigm of biological regulation that allowed consciousness to directly influence health through quantum mechanisms. The most fascinating aspect emerged when researchers began studying how these quantum healing states affected human health and recovery. People exhibiting strong quantum healing characteristics showed the ability to influence their own biological processes with unprecedented precision, achieving rapid recovery and maintaining optimal health through conscious intention. The Institute's quantum computation arrays detected patterns suggesting that these quantum healing states were creating new possibilities for human health. These patterns indicated the emergence of what researchers called biological quantum fields, coherent fields of healing influence that could be directed through conscious intention. Dr. Tanaka's team made a breakthrough when they realized the quantum healing field wasn't just enhancing existing healing capabilities. It was creating new forms of biological regulation that couldn't exist within classical limitations. People began experiencing forms of healing that required quantum processes to function. In the facility's quantum regeneration chambers, designed to study these new healing states, researchers observed how the field affected human health and recovery. They discovered that exposure to strong quantum healing fields enhanced people's ability to consciously influence their own biological processes and support healing in others. The implications for human health were profound. The quantum healing states appeared to be creating new possibilities for health maintenance and recovery, potentially revolutionizing how humans approached medicine. It wasn't just about faster healing. It was about achieving conscious control over biological processes at the quantum level. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the Institute's biological evolution specialist, observed that these quantum healing states were beginning to influence how people maintained their health. We're seeing the emergence of what might be called quantum biological consciousness, she noted, a form of awareness that naturally regulates health through quantum field interactions rather than classical biological processes. Within the Institute's secure research zones, scientists discovered that the quantum healing states exhibited remarkable stability despite their complex nature. Once established, these quantum healing configurations could maintain themselves indefinitely, suggesting the possibility of permanent quantum-level enhancement of healing capabilities. The research team made a startling discovery when they realized the field wasn't just affecting individual healing. It was beginning to influence collective health dynamics. Groups of people began developing shared quantum healing states, creating new forms of collective health regulation that could respond to health challenges with unprecedented effectiveness. Dr. Tanaka's quantum biology lab detected what they called healing resonance zones, regions where quantum healing states created stable patterns of enhanced biological regulation. Within these zones, people reported experiencing unprecedented control over their health processes, as if they could directly influence their biology through conscious intention. The most significant implications emerged when they began studying how these quantum healing states affected human society and healthcare. The field appeared to be creating new forms of medical treatment and health maintenance based on quantum principles, suggesting the possibility of civilizations that could maintain optimal health through direct quantum biological regulation. As the phenomenon continued to develop, researchers observed that the quantum healing field was becoming more sophisticated and nuanced. It wasn't just creating better healing, it was generating entirely new possibilities for human health that transcended classical limitations of biology and medicine. In our next exploration, we'll examine the reality synthesis wave, where human consciousness began developing new capabilities for perceiving and integrating multiple layers of reality simultaneously, challenging our understanding of perception and existence. The reality synthesis wave emerged at the Institute for Multidimensional Perception in Vancouver, where researchers had been investigating unprecedented changes in human perceptual capabilities. Dr. Alexander Mitchell first detected remarkable patterns in the Institute's reality mapping systems that suggested human consciousness was developing the ability to perceive and integrate multiple layers of reality simultaneously. The phenomenon became evident during a study of consciousness expansion. The Institute's quantum perception arrays detected what appeared to be consciousness developing the capacity to naturally perceive and process multiple reality frameworks simultaneously, enabling a new form of synthesized perception that transcended traditional sensory limitations. What we're observing transcends conventional perception, Dr. Mitchell explained to his research colleagues. Human consciousness is developing the ability to perceive and integrate multiple layers of reality simultaneously, creating a new form of synthesized awareness that operates across multiple dimensions of existence. In the Institute's primary reality synthesis chamber, advanced perceptual mapping systems revealed the structure of these new perceptual processes. They appeared as complex interference patterns of various reality frameworks, integrated through consciousness in ways that suggested a fundamental evolution in human perception and understanding. Dr. Maya Patel, the Institute's quantum perception specialist, discovered that these reality synthesis states weren't simply improved sensory perception. They represented a fundamental shift in how consciousness interacted with reality itself, allowing for unprecedented levels of multidimensional awareness and understanding. The most intriguing aspect emerged when researchers began studying how these reality synthesis capabilities affected human experience and understanding. People exhibiting strong reality synthesis showed the ability to naturally perceive and integrate information from multiple layers of reality, achieving extraordinary levels of insight and comprehension. The Institute's quantum reality processors detected complex patterns, suggesting that these synthesis states were creating new possibilities for human perception. These patterns indicated the emergence of what researchers called reality integration networks, systems of consciousness that could maintain coherent awareness across multiple dimensions of existence. Dr. Mitchell's team made a breakthrough when they realized the reality synthesis wave wasn't just enhancing existing perceptual capabilities, it was creating new forms of reality experience that couldn't exist within traditional frameworks of perception. People began experiencing states of awareness that required this enhanced integration to exist. In the facility's reality integration chambers, designed to study these new states of consciousness, researchers observed how the wave affected human perception and understanding. They discovered that exposure to strong reality synthesis fields enhanced people's ability to naturally perceive and integrate multiple layers of existence while maintaining coherent awareness. The implications for human experience were revolutionary. The reality synthesis states appeared to be creating new possibilities for understanding and interacting with existence, potentially transforming how humans perceived reality. It wasn't just about better perception. It was about achieving a new level of integration with multiple dimensions of existence. Dr. Rachel Chen, the Institute's consciousness evolution specialist, observed that these synthesis states were beginning to influence how people understood and interpreted their experiences. We're witnessing the emergence of what might be called quantum reality awareness, she noted, a form of consciousness that naturally integrates multiple layers of existence simultaneously. Within the Institute's secure research zones, scientists discovered that the reality synthesis states exhibited remarkable stability despite their dynamic nature. Once developed, these enhanced perceptual capabilities became permanent features of consciousness, suggesting the possibility of cumulative evolution in human reality perception. The research team made a startling discovery when they realized the wave wasn't just affecting individual perception. It was beginning to influence collective reality understanding. Groups of people began developing synchronized reality synthesis capabilities, creating new forms of collective awareness that could comprehend and respond to multidimensional challenges. Dr. Mitchell's Reality Dynamics Lab detected what they called synthesis coherence zones, regions where reality synthesis waves created stable patterns of enhanced perception. Within these zones, people reported experiencing unprecedented levels of reality integration and understanding, as if they could naturally perceive and process multiple layers of existence simultaneously. The most significant implications emerged when they began studying how these reality synthesis states affected human civilization and progress. The wave appeared to be creating new possibilities for understanding and interacting with reality, suggesting the potential for societies that could maintain natural alignment with multiple dimensions of existence. As the phenomenon continued to develop, researchers observed that the reality synthesis wave was becoming more sophisticated and nuanced. It wasn't just enabling better perception, it was generating entirely new possibilities for human experience that transcended classical limitations of reality perception. In our next exploration, we'll examine the quantum language field, where human consciousness began developing new capabilities for communication and understanding through quantum linguistic principles, challenging our understanding of language and meaning. The quantum language field manifested at the Institute for Advanced Communication Studies in Neo-Berlin, where researchers had been investigating unprecedented changes in human linguistic capabilities. Dr. Eva Schmidt first detected extraordinary patterns in the Institute's quantum communication monitors that suggested human consciousness was developing new abilities to transmit and receive meaning through quantum linguistic mechanisms. The phenomenon first became apparent during a study of consciousness-mediated communication. The Institute's quantum linguistic sensors detected what appeared to be meaning transfer occurring through quantum field interactions between consciousnesses, allowing for direct exchange of concepts and understanding that transcended traditional language barriers. This represents a fundamental transformation in how human communication functions, Dr. Schmidt explained during an emergency linguistics conference. We're observing meaning transfer operating through quantum field interactions, allowing consciousness to directly share understanding at a level that bypasses traditional linguistic limitations. In the Institute's quantum communication chamber, advanced monitoring systems revealed the structure of these new linguistic states. They appeared as intricate quantum interference patterns, with meanings existing in entangled states between multiple consciousnesses, creating what researchers termed quantum semantic resonance. Dr. David Chen, the Institute's quantum linguistics specialist, discovered that these communication states weren't simply enhanced versions of traditional language. They represented an entirely new paradigm of meaning exchange that allowed consciousness to directly share understanding through quantum mechanisms. The most fascinating aspect emerged when researchers began studying how these quantum language states affected human interaction and comprehension. People exhibiting strong quantum linguistic characteristics showed the ability to understand and share complex concepts with unprecedented clarity and immediacy, transcending traditional barriers of language and culture. The Institute's quantum computation arrays detected patterns suggesting that these quantum language states were creating new possibilities for human communication. These patterns indicated the emergence of what researchers called semantic entanglement networks, interconnected fields of shared meaning that could be accessed through quantum consciousness states. Dr. Schmidt's team made a breakthrough when they realized the quantum language field wasn't just enhancing existing linguistic capabilities, it was creating new forms of communication that couldn't exist within classical limitations. People began experiencing forms of understanding that required quantum processes to function. In the facility's quantum semantic chambers, designed to study these new communication states, researchers observed how the field affected human linguistic intelligence and comprehension. They discovered that exposure to strong quantum language fields enhanced people's ability to directly share and understand complex meanings with others. The implications for human interaction were profound. The quantum language states appeared to be creating new possibilities for communication and understanding, potentially revolutionizing how humans shared information and ideas. It wasn't just about better communication, it was about experiencing meaning in an entirely new way. Dr. Maria Santos, the Institute's cognitive evolution specialist, observed that these quantum language states were beginning to influence how people formed and shared ideas. We're seeing the emergence of what might be called quantum semantic intelligence, she noted, a form of linguistic awareness that naturally operates through quantum entanglement rather than classical symbolic processes. Within the Institute's secure research zones, scientists discovered that the quantum language states exhibited remarkable stability despite their complex nature. Once established, these quantum semantic configurations could maintain themselves indefinitely, suggesting the possibility of permanent quantum-level enhancement of communication capabilities. The research team made a startling discovery when they realized the field wasn't just affecting individual communication, it was beginning to influence collective understanding. Groups of people began developing shared quantum language states, creating new forms of collective semantic intelligence that could respond to conceptual challenges with unprecedented clarity. Dr. Schmidt's quantum linguistics lab detected what they called semantic resonance zones, regions where quantum language states created stable patterns of enhanced meaning transfer. Within these zones, people reported experiencing unprecedented access to shared understanding, as if they could directly experience the thoughts and concepts of others. The most significant implications emerged when they began studying how these quantum language states affected human society and culture. The field appeared to be creating new forms of cultural connection and understanding based on quantum principles, suggesting the possibility of civilizations that could maintain deep semantic harmony through direct quantum meaning sharing. As the phenomenon continued to develop, researchers observed that the quantum language field was becoming more sophisticated and nuanced. It wasn't just creating better communication, it was generating entirely new possibilities for human understanding that transcended classical limitations of language and meaning. In our next exploration, we'll examine the consciousness evolution wave, where human awareness began developing new capabilities for accelerated personal and collective development, challenging our understanding of human potential and growth. The consciousness evolution wave manifested at the Global Institute for Human Potential in Cape Town, where researchers had been studying unprecedented changes in human developmental capabilities. Dr. Nelson Mandela Jr. first detected extraordinary patterns in the Institute's consciousness evolution monitors that suggested human awareness was developing accelerated capabilities for personal and collective growth. The phenomenon became evident during a study of consciousness development. The Institute's quantum evolution arrays detected what appeared to be consciousness, developing the ability to undergo rapid transformative growth, enabling unprecedented rates of personal and collective evolution that defied traditional developmental timelines. We're witnessing a fundamental acceleration in human consciousness evolution, Dr. Mandela Jr. explained to the assembled Research Council. Human awareness is developing the capacity to undergo profound transformative changes at rates previously thought impossible, suggesting a new phase in human evolutionary potential. In the Institute's primary evolution chamber, advanced consciousness mapping systems revealed the structure of these accelerated development processes. They appeared as dynamic patterns of consciousness transformation that could maintain stable growth across multiple dimensions of awareness, creating what researchers termed quantum evolutionary fields. Dr. Rebecca Chang, the Institute's evolutionary psychology specialist, discovered that these evolution states weren't simply faster versions of traditional development. They represented a fundamental shift in how consciousness could transform itself, allowing for unprecedented rates of growth and adaptation. The most intriguing aspect emerged when researchers began studying how these accelerated evolution capabilities affected human development and potential. People exhibiting strong consciousness evolution characteristics showed the ability to undergo profound personal transformation in remarkably short periods, achieving levels of development that typically required years or decades. The Institute's quantum consciousness processors detected intricate patterns, suggesting that these evolution states were creating new possibilities for human growth. These patterns indicated the emergence of what researchers called consciousness acceleration networks, systems of awareness that could maintain rapid, stable development across multiple aspects of being. Dr. Mandela Jr.'s team made a breakthrough when they realized the consciousness evolution wave wasn't just speeding up existing development. It was creating new forms of evolution that couldn't exist within traditional frameworks of growth. People began experiencing transformative states that required this enhanced evolutionary capacity to manifest. In the facility's evolution chambers, designed to study these new states of accelerated development, researchers observed how the wave affected human potential and growth. They discovered that exposure to strong evolution fields enhanced people's ability to naturally undergo rapid personal transformation while maintaining psychological stability. The implications for human development were revolutionary. The accelerated evolution states appeared to be creating new possibilities for personal and collective growth, potentially transforming how humans developed their potential. It wasn't just about faster growth, It was about achieving new levels of evolutionary capability. Dr. Amara Okafor, the Institute's collective evolution specialist, observed that these evolution states were beginning to influence how people developed collectively. We're witnessing the emergence of what might be called quantum evolutionary intelligence, she noted, a form of development that naturally maintains accelerated growth across multiple dimensions of consciousness simultaneously. Within the Institute's secure research zones, scientists discovered that the evolution states exhibited remarkable stability despite their dynamic nature. Once established, these enhanced developmental capabilities became persistent features of consciousness, suggesting the possibility of permanent acceleration in human evolutionary potential. The research team made a startling discovery when they realized the wave wasn't just affecting individual evolution. It was beginning to influence collective development. Communities began developing synchronized evolution capabilities, creating new forms of collective growth that could respond to challenges with unprecedented adaptability. Dr. Mandela Jr.'s Evolutionary Dynamics Lab detected what they called development acceleration zones, regions where consciousness evolution waves created stable patterns of enhanced growth. Within these zones, people reported experiencing unprecedented rates of personal and collective development, as if they could naturally access and integrate advanced states of consciousness. The most significant implications emerged when they began studying how these accelerated evolution states affected human civilization and progress. The wave appeared to be creating new possibilities for collective development and adaptation, suggesting the potential for societies that could maintain rapid, stable evolution at unprecedented scales. As the phenomenon continued to develop, researchers observed that the consciousness evolution wave was becoming more sophisticated and nuanced. It wasn't just enabling faster development. It was generating entirely new possibilities for human evolution that transcended classical limitations of growth and potential. In our next exploration, we'll examine the reality creation field, where human consciousness began developing new capabilities for directly influencing and shaping physical reality through quantum consciousness principles, challenging our understanding of the relationship between mind and matter. The reality creation field emerged at the Institute for Quantum Consciousness Studies in Neo-Moscow, where researchers had been investigating unprecedented changes in human consciousness's ability to influence physical reality. Dr. Natalia Volkov first detected extraordinary patterns in the Institute's quantum interaction monitors that suggested human awareness was developing direct capabilities to shape and modify physical reality through consciousness. The phenomenon first manifested during a study of mind-matter interactions. The Institute's quantum field sensors detected what appeared to be consciousness, developing the ability to directly influence physical systems through quantum field interactions, enabling unprecedented levels of reality manipulation that transcended known physical laws. What we're observing represents a fundamental shift in the relationship between consciousness and reality. Dr. Volkov explained during an emergency physics symposium. Human consciousness is developing the ability to directly influence and shape physical systems through quantum mechanisms, suggesting a new paradigm in our understanding of reality creation. In the Institute's quantum interaction chamber, sophisticated monitoring systems revealed the structure of these reality creation processes. They appeared as complex quantum interference patterns that could maintain stable influences on physical systems, creating what researchers termed consciousness-matter coupling fields. Dr. Marcus Chen, the Institute's quantum physics specialist, discovered that these reality creation states weren't simply enhanced versions of known mind-matter interactions. They represented an entirely new paradigm of consciousness-reality interaction that allowed direct manipulation of physical systems through quantum consciousness mechanisms. The most fascinating aspect emerged when researchers began studying how these reality creation capabilities affected the physical world. People exhibiting strong reality creation characteristics showed the ability to influence physical systems with unprecedented precision and intentionality, achieving effects that seemed to defy classical physical limitations. The Institute's quantum computation arrays detected patterns suggesting that these reality creation states were opening new possibilities for consciousness-matter interaction. These patterns indicated the emergence of what researchers called quantum reality fields, zones where consciousness could directly influence and shape physical reality through quantum mechanisms. Dr. Volkov's team made a breakthrough when they realized the reality creation field wasn't just enhancing existing mind-matter interactions. It was creating new forms of reality manipulation that couldn't exist within classical physical limitations. People began experiencing forms of reality influence that required quantum processes to function. In the facility's reality manipulation chambers, designed to study these new states of consciousness, matter interaction, researchers observed how the field affected physical systems. They discovered that exposure to strong reality creation fields enhanced people's ability to consciously influence and modify physical reality through direct intention. The implications for human capability were profound. The reality creation states appeared to be creating new possibilities for consciousness-matter interaction, potentially revolutionizing how humans interacted with physical reality. It wasn't just about better control. It was about achieving direct influence over physical systems through consciousness. Dr. Sarah Thompson, the Institute's consciousness physics specialist, observed that these reality creation states were beginning to influence how people interacted with their environment. We're seeing the emergence of what might be called quantum reality intelligence, she noted, a form of consciousness that naturally maintains direct influence over physical systems through quantum field interactions. Within the Institute's secure research zones, scientists discovered that the reality creation states exhibited remarkable stability despite their complex nature. Once established, these quantum reality configurations could maintain themselves indefinitely, suggesting the possibility of permanent enhancement of consciousness-matter interaction capabilities. The research team made a startling discovery when they realized the field wasn't just affecting individual reality creation. It was beginning to influence collective reality manipulation. Groups of people began developing shared reality creation states, creating new forms of collective physical influence that could respond to environmental challenges with unprecedented effectiveness. Dr. Volkov's quantum physics lab detected what they called reality modification zones, regions where reality creation states created stable patterns of enhanced physical influence. Within these zones, people reported experiencing unprecedented control over physical systems, as if they could directly shape reality through conscious intention. The most significant implications emerged when they began studying how these reality creation states affected human civilization and technology. The field appeared to be creating new forms of physical manipulation based on quantum consciousness principles, suggesting the possibility of civilizations that could maintain direct influence over physical reality through collective consciousness. As the phenomenon continued to develop, researchers observed that the reality creation field was becoming more sophisticated and nuanced. It wasn't just creating better control, it was generating entirely new possibilities for human reality interaction that transcended classical limitations of physics and consciousness. In our next exploration, we'll examine the temporal consciousness wave, where human awareness began developing new capabilities for perceiving and interacting with time in non-linear ways, challenging our understanding of temporal experience and causality. The quantum healing field manifested at the Global Institute for Consciousness Medicine in Neo-Kyoto, where researchers had been studying unprecedented changes in human healing capabilities. Dr. Hiroshi Tanaka first detected remarkable patterns in the Institute's biofield monitoring systems that suggested human consciousness was developing enhanced abilities to directly influence health and healing through quantum mechanisms. The phenomenon emerged during a groundbreaking study of consciousness-mediated healing. The Institute's quantum biological sensors detected consciousness developing the capacity to directly influence biological systems at the quantum level, enabling unprecedented healing effects that transcended traditional medical understanding. We're witnessing a fundamental transformation in human healing capabilities, Dr. Tanaka explained to the assembled medical researchers. Consciousness is developing the ability to directly influence biological systems through quantum field interactions, suggesting new possibilities for healing and health maintenance. Dr. Sarah Chen, the Institute's quantum biology specialist, discovered that these healing states weren't simply enhanced versions of known mind-body interactions. They represented an entirely new paradigm of consciousness-based healing that operated through quantum biological mechanisms, allowing direct influence over health and cellular function. The most significant aspect emerged when researchers began studying how these quantum healing capabilities affected biological systems. People exhibiting strong healing characteristics showed the ability to influence health and recovery with remarkable precision, achieving results that seemed to defy conventional medical limitations. The Institute's quantum biofield processors detected patterns suggesting that these healing states were creating new possibilities for health and recovery. These patterns indicated the emergence of what researchers called quantum healing networks, systems where consciousness could directly influence biological function through quantum field interactions. Within the Institute's secure research zones, scientists discovered that the quantum healing states exhibited remarkable stability and reproducibility. Once established, these enhanced healing capabilities became persistent features of consciousness, suggesting the possibility of permanent advancement in human healing potential. As the phenomenon continued to develop, researchers observed that the quantum healing field was becoming more sophisticated and nuanced. It wasn't just enabling better healing, it was generating entirely new possibilities for health and recovery that transcended classical limitations of medicine and biology. The implications for human health and medicine were revolutionary. These quantum healing states appeared to be creating new possibilities for treatment and recovery, potentially transforming how humans approached health and healing. It wasn't just about better healing. It was about achieving direct conscious influence over biological systems through quantum mechanisms. In our next exploration, we'll examine the collective intelligence field, where human consciousness began developing new capabilities for shared awareness and coordinated thinking, challenging our understanding of individual and group consciousness. The collective intelligence field manifested at the Institute for Group Consciousness Studies in Mumbai, where researchers had been investigating unprecedented changes in human collective awareness. Dr. Priya Sharma first detected extraordinary patterns in the Institute's consciousness monitoring systems that suggested human minds were developing enhanced capabilities for shared thinking and coordinated intelligence. The phenomenon emerged during a study of group consciousness dynamics. The Institute's quantum field sensors detected what appeared to be the formation of stable collective intelligence networks, enabling groups of people to share thoughts and process information as a unified system. These networks demonstrated capabilities far beyond traditional forms of group collaboration. What we're observing is a fundamental evolution in collective human intelligence, Dr. Sharma explained during a research presentation. Groups are developing the ability to think and process information as coherent systems, suggesting new possibilities for human collaboration and problem-solving. Dr. James Wilson, the Institute's collective cognition specialist, discovered that these shared intelligence states created what they termed quantum thought networks, systems where multiple consciousnesses could operate in synchronized patterns, sharing information and processing power across quantum field connections. The most fascinating aspect emerged when researchers began studying how these collective intelligence capabilities affected group performance. Teams exhibiting strong collective field characteristics showed the ability to solve complex problems with unprecedented speed and accuracy, accessing levels of insight that seemed impossible for individual minds. As the phenomenon continued to develop, researchers observed that the collective intelligence field was becoming more refined and sophisticated. It wasn't just enabling better collaboration, it was generating entirely new possibilities for human collective thinking that transcended individual cognitive limitations. In our next exploration, we'll examine the creative evolution field, where human consciousness began developing new capabilities for innovative thinking and artistic expression. The creative evolution field emerged at the Institute for Advanced Artistic Studies in Paris, where researchers had been studying unprecedented changes in human creative capabilities. Dr. Marie Laurent first detected extraordinary patterns in the Institute's consciousness monitoring systems that suggested human creativity was evolving into entirely new forms of expression and innovation. The phenomenon became apparent during a study of creative consciousness. The Institute's neural mapping systems detected what appeared to be new pathways forming in the creative centers of the brain, enabling unprecedented levels of artistic expression and innovative thinking that transcended traditional creative boundaries. We're witnessing a fundamental transformation in human creative potential, Dr. Laurent explained to the assembled artists and researchers. The human mind is developing new capabilities for creative expression that go beyond our current understanding of artistic and innovative processes. Dr. Alex Rivera, the Institute's creative evolution specialist, discovered that these enhanced creative states weren't simply improvements in existing artistic abilities. They represented an entirely new paradigm of creative consciousness that allowed direct access to what researchers termed quantum creative fields, domains where imagination could directly manifest as tangible creative expression. The most intriguing aspect emerged when researchers began studying how these evolved creative capabilities affected artistic output. Artists exhibiting strong creative field characteristics showed the ability to produce works that seemed to transcend conventional artistic limitations, accessing forms of expression that appeared to exist beyond traditional creative boundaries. As the phenomenon continued to develop, observers noted that the creative evolution field was becoming more sophisticated and nuanced. It wasn't just enabling better art, it was generating entirely new possibilities for human creative expression that challenged existing concepts of imagination and innovation. In our next and final exploration, we'll examine the consciousness integration field, where all these evolutionary changes begin to combine and synthesize into a coherent whole. The consciousness integration field manifested at the Global Institute for Consciousness Evolution in Neo Geneva, representing the culmination of all previously observed consciousness phenomena. Dr. Elena Rossi and her international team first detected patterns suggesting that the various evolutionary fields were beginning to merge and synthesize into a coherent whole. The phenomenon emerged during a comprehensive study of consciousness evolution. The Institute's advanced monitoring systems detected what appeared to be the harmonious integration of reality creation, temporal awareness, quantum healing, collective intelligence, and creative evolution capabilities. These formerly distinct aspects of enhanced consciousness began operating as a unified field of evolved human potential. What we're witnessing is the final stage of this consciousness evolution, Dr. Rossi explained during the historic global broadcast. All these enhanced capabilities are merging into a single integrated field of human potential, suggesting we're approaching a new threshold in human evolution. Dr. David Kumar, the Institute's integration specialist, discovered that this unified field created what they termed holistic consciousness networks, systems where all enhanced capabilities could operate simultaneously and synergistically. Individuals within these networks demonstrated the ability to seamlessly access and utilize all evolved capabilities as needed. The most profound aspect emerged when researchers began studying how this integrated consciousness affected human experience. People exhibiting strong integration characteristics showed the ability to fluidly shift between different enhanced states, maintaining access to all evolved capabilities while operating as complete, unified beings. As this final phase continued to unfold, observers noted that the integration field was creating a new baseline for human consciousness. It wasn't just combining enhanced capabilities. It was generating an entirely new level of human existence that transcended all previous limitations and pointed toward humanity's future potential. This marked the completion of the documented phases of human consciousness evolution, though many researchers believed it was merely the beginning of humanity's journey into new realms of possibility and potential. Up next, you've got two more standout theory right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.